got your attention now, don't I?
This is the Black Rifle Coffee Podcast.
Right, we're here to review Mike's new book. It's called First Blood. I haven't read it before, but I think it's going to be good. What do you think?
I actually wrote it in high school and had it made into a movie before I ever got out of high school.
Really?
People don't realize that. Yeah.
Wow. You've been around. Plus, you look a lot different on the back of the.
Yeah. That's an artist rendering. It's like like, you know, those guys that do sketches for like courthouses and stuff like that. We had them like draw what they thought I might look like based on the book, and that's what they came up with.
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, that stash.
Right? That's pretty epic.
That's what I'm going for.
That's pure fucking 1970s right there.
Oh. You still have that turtleneck? Or?
Yeah.
I wear nothing but turtlenecks typically. And if I can't wear a turtleneck, I'll wear a dickie.
Yeah.
You know,
Solid
with a like
dickie.
Sport jacket or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good look. I think, you know, I don't know if you guys know who Ilya Kuryakin was, but that's the look that I'm basically going for.
No, I don't. I don't know who that is.
That was the most obscure reference I've ever heard in my life.
It was from the original Man from U.N.C.L.E. TV series.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 55.
Oh, you look
but I have
great.
an appreciation for things.
Great. 55? I thought you were going to say like 45.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah. Now, my Man from U.N.C.L.E. is before my time.
Yeah.
But it's weird story. When I was a prison guard, there ended up one night that I was on for a 12-hour shift. There was a Man from U.N.C.L.E. marathon on TCM or whatever, and I ended up watching the whole thing. So,
who was watching the prisoners?
We would shift back and forth. So it was, at night it was only two of us. So one of us would we'd sit in the control room for usually an hour, and then switch. And there wasn't a whole lot to do. It was a pretty small institution. So you basically you walked around. When you were on the floor, you walked around every 15 minutes, and there was these electronic cards that you had to put into this little box. It showed that you were actually walking around checking, making sure everything was locked and everything. But,
so it wasn't like at night the prisoners do justice.
No, there's nothing really like that. So.
It's disappointing.
I know.
Yeah.
I wanted that story to be so much better. Like when you said prison, I wanted you to say when I was in prison. That's how I thought it would be. Like, and then you could tell us like that time when you were like, you know, shanking some dude but no.
I was never in prison. I was in jail. I got arrested. I was home on leave when I was in 175 and I got arrested once and spent the night in jail. So that ended up like screwing me for so long. I almost didn't get a Texas medical license because of that.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. So,
what'd you do?
So
I love this podcast so much.
It's a pause.
Actually, I didn't do it. Just
okay,
so you guys
no. So I'm not gonna try to say, you know, that I wasn't out handing out Bibles, and you know, just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
You weren't.
So
first of all, you weren't out handing out Bibles.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was a Thursday night. We were in a bar watching Thursday night football.
Right.
I was 20, so I was underage.
Yep.
But I was used to living in Georgia, where I was going to bars all the time anyway. So we're in there drinking, and somebody who was not actually even with us ended up getting really rowdy, and the police ended up being called. And everybody went outside to watch the fracas that was going to occur between this guy and the local police. And it ended up being a lot of people kind of yelling, surrounding the police and yelling, and some people making threats. I was trying to be the voice of reason in all this, and what I ended up doing is one guy who ran towards one of the cops, I ended up actually grabbing him around the waist, throwing him over my shoulder, and then throw him in a pickup to get him out of there. And we left, and then we ended up going back to get our cars. We'd left a bunch of cars there, so we went back to get our cars. Now there's 6 patrol cars of police officers there, and we're just going to arrest everybody, and we'll sort it out later. So I got arrested for minor in establishment that serves alcohol, drunk in public, even though they never gave me any type of sobriety test. Assault on a police officer, resisting arrest. So resisting arrest is always just kind of thrown in there.
Right.
So spent the night in jail. We didn't even have to get bail the next morning. They just let us go.
Right.
And then when it went up when it finally went to court, which was like 6 months later, I was back in Savannah, and my lawyer appeared, and they ended up basically. This was the age before computers.
Right.
So an expungement back then could be a real expungement because the only record would be on paper. Sure. So basically what the judge did is he said, all right, I'm going to take this entire arrest record. I'm going to put it in the safe in my office. And if I don't hear Mike Simpson's name for a year, then I'm going to shred all this. And it never happened. So it really is a true expungement. Like there's no record of it.
Until now.
Where that screwed me is when I went to get a Texas medical license, it tells you, even if something's been expunged, you better be honest about it.
Right.
So I was honest about it. Right. And then they said, okay, you need to get paperwork from California saying exactly how that got wrapped up, where there's multiple problems with that. The first of which being none of those records. This was 1980. We just got back from Honduras, 1987.
Right.
None of those records have been transferred into the computer. Right. So there really is no record of it unless it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're in a big fucking warehouse somewhere. And the second problem is California has a law that if you call the state of California and say, I needed my criminal record, they will give it to you. But if you call the state of California and say you need his criminal record because you want to employ him, they absolutely will not give it to you. That law has been in effect for a while. And the way employers were getting around that in California is you'd come in and interview for a job with me. And I'd say, well, look, I can't get your criminal record. But if you want this job, you get your criminal record and you bring it to me in the envelope that it was mailed in.
Right.
Right. Well, then California found out that employers were doing that. So then they amended the law to say an individual may not request their own criminal record if it is for the purpose of giving to another agency.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. So when I call, but they won't tell you that.
Right.
I called California. I said, this is why I need my record. And there was like a long pause and they said, you can't have it. I was like, what? And they didn't say you can't have it because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
They said you can't have it. I ended up having to get the JSOC JAG involved. And the JSOC JAG was able to pull up the record. And I'm trying to explain this to the state of Texas.
Right.
I can't get the record. I can't hold a gun to the state of California's head and make them
be interesting if you could.
Be interesting if you could. Yeah. Granted, I can probably kick half the state's ass easily. Right.
Yeah. Easily.
But that's not going to accomplish anything. So I had to get a letter from the JSOC JAG saying this is why he can't get that record. Give him his fucking medical license. And then I got my medical license. So
holy shit.
It's a topic I really did not expect to discuss on the podcast today. But
I think it's great. Have you been arrested?
I have.
Yeah. Anything
by MPs though, not like regular.
Not actual cops.
Not real police.
Not real police.
Yeah.
Just people who join the military to be bad to their
police other
to write parking tickets. And,
Well, they arrested me.
What'd they arrest you for?
It's a good story. Sorta.
We're here.
So we're
here for story.
I was in BNOC, the basic non-commissioned officer.
Oh yeah, BNOC, of course.
In
Hurry up, Ben.
Georgia.
Like, don't fucking pussyfoot around. Like, I'm trying to get some coffee. Come on. Get in here, boy. Let's go. Thank you. No, none for.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Knowing's half the battle. Yeah, so I was out like some weekend, me and all my buddies from BNOC, and I met a young lady who was attending the basic officer leadership course, the second lieutenant.
Okay, good.
So we decided to go back to her lodging, which was barracks.
Right.
And I snuck past the CQ of that, whatever.
Using Ranger ninja skills.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically just like having her open another door and me going in it.
Oh, right.
And
Jason Bourne shit.
Usually there's a broom handle involved. A broom handle and a fire exit involved.
So that CQ came and approached me and was like, hey, you got to get out of here. And I was like, yeah, fuck you, bud.
Right.
And took off. I guess I'm out now. I can tell the real story.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to get
I just want to interject. That CQ wouldn't have given it, if she wasn't hot, he wouldn't have given a shit.
Oh, no, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, so he came up to get me out of there and was like, give me your ID card, give me your ID. I was like, fuck you, dude. And at this point, I was like, I should probably leave.
Yeah.
And I used a little bit of physical force to leave.
Jujitsu.
Yeah. Ninjitsu.
Ninjitsu.
That looked like
I like that.
Jitsu,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of swam out of him.
Right.
And then MPs came, figured out who I was, where I was from. They came down and arrested me. And
What did they arrest you for?
It was
battery or something?
Oh, I left a part out, so I'm forgetting parts of it.
When you took that pipe to his head?
As I was leaving, it was the Bolick barracks. So like all these like new second lieutenants, they had this like display in the hallway. Like they had all their kit laid out in like dress such a way. So as I left, I kind of like did some stuff to it. You know, just flipped it around, had some fun with it.
Of course.
And so it was, they arrested me for theft with the intent to sell of government property. So they basically said, oh, he was trying to steal stuff. I was like, I didn't steal anything. I was just throwing a bunch of shit around because you guys didn't secure your shit over the weekend. But yeah, I spent the night in like basically the Fort Benning drunk tank. And then one of the cadre from BNOC came and picked me up. And I was like, I was in Ranger Battalion at the time. I was like, oh, I'm fucked. Like, I'm going to get kicked out of battalion. I'm going to get kicked out of BNOC. And this guy came down. He's like, hey, what's up, bud? And just like, all right, see. I was like, is anything going to happen? He's like, no, I don't think so. And nothing happened. Anyway, not a very good story, but
that is a good story.
That is a good story.
She was a very attractive young lady. I don't even remember her name, but I would, if you're out there.
Yeah. You're out there.
Yeah.
You know,
missed connection.
He's got a A-team looking van. It's quite nice. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
missed connection. You were a young, fresh-faced second lieutenant. I was an NCO flinging TA-50.
Right. yeah, exactly.
She's probably a battalion commander now, you know?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I would love to see you guys get back together. Some fucking romance story of the ages.
And if it happened because of this podcast, that would be all the better.
Yeah, she was great.
So, First Blood, this was one of the books that made a lot of sense to me. Because have you read this book?
Never read it. Obviously, I've seen the film. Everybody has.
It is a book about a psychopath, basically, because it's a big departure from the movie.
Yeah. Well, in the book, from what I understand, he deserves to get arrested.
Oh yeah. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. Like I've. This is a first edition, and it's not me flexing on the podcast. This is a gift by Tom Davin, my co-CEO. He gave me the first edition, and but what it is a recommendation for everybody out there to read this because it is such a good book, and it's a book about basically, a psychopath. But it's very good, and you should read it. But that leads me to my question because I read this back in the day, and I was like, you know what, these Green Berets seem like pretty big badasses. I was highly disappointed later in life, but
weren't we all? If we're being honest, weren't we all?
We were.
What are you guys talking about?
What were you? Jariko was in Ranger Battalion. You were in Ranger Battalion. I was never there. But what led you guys?
Then you don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what it was all about. I can just imagine, like short haircuts and a lot of hoorahs and stuff, right?
15 minutes early and buffing the floor.
Yeah. But what led you guys to join to begin with? And was it like books? Was it movies? Was it a family member? Like, let me hear what you got.
So I spent my formative years in a small town called Tehachapi, California. Yeah. So blue collar upbringing,
right?
Hunting coyotes and rabbits, and walking down the middle of town with a .22 rifle over my shoulder. Pickup trucks and keg parties and barns and all that shit. Right. That and kind of a combination of my involvement in sports. Appreciating teamwork, appreciate being a part of something larger than yourself and putting yourself through a physical crucible to be a better version of yourself type thing. This was also the 1980s, so being a patriot had become cool again, right? This was the Reagan era.
Right.
So my best friend growing up, a guy who was a year older than me, who you may know or know of, a guy by the name of Brian Edwards. He ultimately became the Command Sergeant Major of SF Command.
Yeah.
Brian and I were best friends growing up. He's a year older than me. And right about the time, maybe I was a freshman and he was a sophomore, or maybe even a little bit before that, we started talking about military stuff and watching military movies and learning about stuff and going and talking to the recruiter and figuring out, what airborne units were and what Rangers were and what SF was, and talking even to the Navy recruiter about SEALs and talking to the Marine recruiter about Force Recon. And ultimately, at that time, the Army seemed the biggest fit because the Army was the only branch that would guarantee you at least a shot right off the street, right? If you wanted to be
like a shot for what?
Like a shot for one of these special operations units, or or yes, you're gonna be an unassigned airborne slot.
You could have gone. Are you talking only Ranger Regiment, or they would have given you an SF slot?
So the year before I went on delayed entry, you could still do an SF slot.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what Brian did.
They had like an 18 X-ray program.
It wasn't called that,
but it
was essentially what it was, right? And to hear Brian describe it, you had an interesting collective in your class because you would have guys who were literally PFCs who had gone, basic training, airborne school. Now they're at Bragg on Smoke Bomb Hill. You had those guys, and then you had regular Army guys who'd been in the 82nd or somewhere else, right? And had put in paperwork to go. And then you had, even in your class, you had like Vietnam era guys who had either, were on the younger end of the Vietnam spectrum.
Right.
And had done a little bit of regular Army stuff, or maybe had been to Vietnam, gotten out for a while, and now, again, it's cool to be in the military again, and
right.
I don't want to do that, so I came back in. They didn't have that when I went to sign up. They decided, okay, we want to go to this. We want more mature guys. It wasn't like the X-ray program ended up being, where it was a more intensive pipeline where they were kind of on top of you to herd you through. It was more catch as catch can. So the attrition rate among those guys, like Brian, was really, really high.
Right.
Like it really was the, 100 will test today and 3 are going to make it.
Right.
Out of those guys who came in right out of high school. So they said, we're not getting our return for that. So we're going to go to recruiting out of a larger military pool. So the only option available to me was Ranger Regiment. But ultimately, that was the absolute best thing for me. So I'm so thankful that was the only option that I had. Because I think if I had gotten the SF option out of the street, off the street right out of high school, I don't think that would have been a good fit for me. I think I needed some maturing.
Well, plus you probably would have been fat now. You know what I mean?
Probably.
Yeah. It's a good joke only for people that inside jokes.
Somebody posted
it's inside jokes.
You and I are both members of a Facebook forum where you don't post very much.
I don't. I just talk shit in there.
Yeah.
I don't actually talk shit. I just chime in because, somebody will chime in and say something about me being a cock or something. And I'll be like, what? What are you guys talking about?
Yeah, that we can get into that later.
Yeah.
The whole, we forget Evan's in here, so we're going to talk shit about
Yeah. Like, man. And then I'm like, I'm right here. You guys just ask me some questions. Like I check in on this every 2 years.
Yeah.
So, in 2 years, I might respond.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody posted the other day, they posted a picture of Vincent D'Onofrio from some movie where I guess he plays a former SF guy.
Right.
He's got an SF crest hat, and he's Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's not Richard Simmons, right? And he posted it, and I posted as a comment, I said, looks like 90% are retired team guys. And somebody immediately said, that's fucking mean, but also accurate.
It's like, when did is this like a sidetrack, but it's like, man, all of a sudden dudes are so sensitive.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, you realize that in the team room or even in as a company, we fucking brutalize each other. And it's but now because we're not under the same roof, you think that we got to be nice to one another.
Yeah,
I'm like, fuck you.
It's because what's happened is they've been so accustomed to being worshipped on the cul-de-sac.
Oh yeah.
Right? That now that they're interjected in with a bunch of alphas again, they're like, oh, whoa, hey. Everybody on the cul-de-sac kisses my ass. Why am I not getting that from you guys? I'm not. I guess essentially we are bagging on our brothers in arms, but I mean, I don't
not at all. I love those.
Yeah, none of this is with hatred.
No.
At all.
No.
I have friends who will specifically call me because they're like, I want you to kind of be mean to me. Because everybody I work with, if I try to break their balls or anything, it's like you could hear a pin drop. And they're like, come on, man, just tell me what a piece of shit I am.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, here you go.
We need that honesty. You need that accountability. I remember that on those very rare occasions in SF where you would actually have a company formation and you'd all be standing there And you're so unaccustomed to being in formations that they make you be there ridiculously early because they know they have to. So you're standing around waiting for whatever it is, and none of you want to be there. So it starts to devolve into like the Hunger Games,
right.
Which, hey, I don't normally get to make fun of that guy on that team,
but I'm
three ranks back, and I'm going to talk, boy, you're fucking, look at the size of his ears. You know, and this whole back and forth starts to occur that occasionally can get out of hand.
Occasionally. I think it's fun. I mean, that's part of the culture in the community, right? It's like making fun of each other is something that's inherent to it. I heard the story about Jariko recently, which I love, and I'm going to tell it for you because I worked with this guy later in life that he was in Ranger Battalion with, and he called me because where were you guys at? You were at like
we were in Graf and Beer.
Yeah. Well, no, not this one. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the Alex Sainz story. Oh my God. I was laughing so hard. So my buddy, we worked at JRS later in life. And were you?
I was a RIP TAC. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Now, RIP then. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this, from what Alex told me, and Alex is like 6'2", what do you think?
Big dude.
He's big. Yeah, he's big. And he's like farm strong kid, right? 6'2", and he's an incredibly like generous, great guy. I would imagine going through, he's probably just a really nice kid.
Yeah.
That's what I would imagine. Because he's always been super nice. So I would imagine that's the way he would act. But he remembers Jariko because he was saying, he told me that there was no way that I was going to pass this course, that he wasn't going to let me under any circumstance, but you can stay if you want. It's just going to be brutal. And he's like, I would get, in his mind, he was like, he was getting 2 or 3 times whatever everybody else did. And then he told him, as you guys were going to get the beret ceremony, right? Was that what it was?
On the way to graduation.
Yeah. On the way to graduation, he's like, hey, you can wear your beret for this, but you're going back to the needs of the Army, and I'm going to take it away from you after this.
One last chance to get somebody to quit, man.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah. And so Alex is like, fuck, man. Like, I went through this entire thing, and now this dude is telling me I got to give the beret back at the end. And I could hear that he was still hurt by this as a 40-year-old man on the phone. And
that's, I took my job seriously, right? Like I had to say, attrition was my mission. Is what I would say.
Attrition was my mission.
And if I'm going to be able to break you, like you're that mentally weak where you believe that and you're going to quit, like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Later.
I got you.
Well, it's the equivalent of when you go out on the run and then you come back to the company area and everybody's like, oh, we're done. And then you bypass the company area and keep going. And then 5 fuckers will fall out.
Yep.
Like, they only had enough mental strength to make it that far. And it's like, if we're running farther, I can't do it.
Yeah. I had, when I was a cadre, I called it shaking hands and kissing babies.
Right.
You can get 40 dudes together and smoke them all together. Nobody's going to quit.
Right.
You start making them think that you noticed them. And you're going to get dudes dropped because they're like, oh, I'm just doomed.
Doomed.
I'm doomed. I might as well just quit, Yeah. And I learned that like when I went, going back to what made you want to join,
Yeah, we got to answer that.
So my dad was in Ranger Battalion. He's a grenade orator. But back then, it was before the regiment was formed. So the battalions were like, not quite, they were special operations, but they weren't under the SOCOM umbrella.
I didn't realize that. So in Grenada, the battalions were not formed?
The battalions were formed. There was not a regiment.
There wasn't a regiment.
Yeah.
Okay, so how were the battalions
That's why the scrolls were
then?
different.
Yeah, because I didn't realize that. I know the scroll was like way different.
Yeah, it was a very loose affiliation. It's like the scrolls were different. The flash was the same. The heraldry was the same.
Yeah.
A lot of the SOPs were the same.
What was the command structure? Where did they report to?
So like 275 fell under I Corps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about for battalion.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Regiment stepped in shortly after I got there, so I don't even remember who.
So after Grenada, they were like, this is cool. Let's make more of this.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and during, it's important. So Grenada, because, So when Grenada happened and the 82nd came in and relieved him in place, and the Rangers were like, all right, we get back on the plane and we leave. And the ground commanders were like, no, that's not the way it works. You're OpCon to us now. So that was the beginnings. The beginnings of JSOC was kind of already rolling. But that was what really kicked the spurs to everything, not only with JSOC, but also with Ranger Regiment, so that they could say, no, we need to never have a situation where our special operations assets are OpCon to any regular Army, because they were literally going to say, no, you're going to stay here and do what we tell you to do until the ground commander releases you. And they didn't want to be in a situation like that again.
So was he in 2nd Battalion?
Mm-hmm.
How many battalions were there?
Back then, there were just 2.
There were just 2.
There was 1st Battalion, 75th Infantry Airborne was
interesting.
And then 2nd Battalion, 75th Infantry Airborne. Yeah.
This is fucking cool. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So, but like back then, it was very different. You know, it wasn't, you weren't fenced, like all these things. And my dad was a medic. So like he spent his like 3.5, 4 years in Ranger Battalion and then went to the 82nd, went all over. But always growing up, serving in the Rangers was like his pinnacle. He always looked back on that with the most, like, he loved it. All of his like career-long friends that he made in the Army, they're all Rangers, right? They're all those guys. So I always like looked at that point. I knew I wanted to be in the Army or the military, but I always looked at that point in his career as like, oh. And then my brother's 6 years older than me, graduated high school 5 years before because he's dumb. He failed a grade. He got held back because he was incorrigible. My parents punished him. Anyway, he went in 92. He went to 3rd Ranger Battalion. So I knew I was going to join the military in some way, shape, or form. But my dad really encouraged me, like, hey, just because we were Rangers, like, you don't have to do that. Like, he really wanted me to be a PJ, really pushed me in that direction because he felt that I would be treated better. My quality of life would be.
Does he not like you?
Dude, man, that's a bullet I dodged.
Yeah, right?
Whew, I'm so glad I did that.
So he has a favorite son.
He wanted
you're not it.
He wanted a free Sawzall, and he saw that.
Where he's like, hey, listen, son, like, listen, like there are hunters and there are gatherers. You look to me like more like a gatherer. You could be a good gatherer.
I was a gentle kid, you know.
When I see you, I think enabler.
Yeah.
I see you like being able to parachute, but more like a nurse, you know? Like you're more like a nurse.
At the end of the day, like, he did give me some good advice. He was like, he absolutely didn't want me to go in the Army and be a Ranger. But when he would talk, because he was a medic, he'd be like, if you ever do that, just be a grunt, just be an infantry guy. And it's, in hindsight now, I'm like, I was just sour grapes for my dad. He's like, those infantry guys didn't do shit. I had to do their job plus all this extra stuff. You know, and I'm like, that's bullshit, Dad. But, so yeah, I actually, when I joined, I told him I was just going to MEPS to take the ASVAB for the Air Force to have him sign the form. And he went and picked me up from like the recruiting, you know, all the recruiters are like in the same. So he came to pick me up. He's like, what'd you get on the test? I was like, good. I joined the Army with a Ranger contract. He's like, what the fuck? He was pissed for about 20 seconds. And then he like got all, he's like, I'm proud of you. And it was like a good dad moment.
That is awesome.
Yeah. But that's what led me there. But it wasn't always, it's not like I always knew I was going to go to Ranger Battalion. I looked at, you know, the Navy, and same thing for me. The Army was the only entity that would guarantee you a shot at the title. Right. You know, like you couldn't join the Marines with, like, the Marines when I joined wouldn't even guarantee you an MOS.
Oh, are you kidding me?
No. And that was really common. That in the 80s, it's like they will tell you what they need. Navy was the same way, because I took my ASVAB with the Navy, and they're like, they looked at my ASVAB score, they said, you're going on a nuclear sub.
Right.
And I'm like, what if I don't want to? And they're like, you're going on a nuclear sub.
Right.
Like, that's what you're signing up for. And what they didn't tell me, because they were still telling me and when you get to A school, you can volunteer for buds. But what they didn't tell me is, and since we're giving you the nuclear sub MOS, which has like this many people in it, you'll never, any request to get out
will never happen.
It's like at that time, the nuclear guys and the sonar techs, there was like no way that you could ever get out of that job.
Right. Yeah. There's no way.
I played hockey in high school with a kid. He joined the Navy same time as me. And he did like 20 years on nuclear subs. I think it's pronounced nuclear though.
Nuclear.
Nuclear. I don't know. I always default to whatever anybody else is saying around me because it just makes more sense. That's how I've actually learned how to speak. Like, just listen to the radio and then mimic. I don't actually know the words.
I am also in the story of how I came to join the Army with a Ranger contract. I am also giving myself a little too much credit because back then, remember the recruiters had like a VHS and they would be like, "I'm going to show you the PJ video, or I'm going to show you the SEAL video."
Yeah. I'm going to show you the video of your mom and I.
I hate swimming.
You do?
Don't like it.
Still to this day?
I'm a little bit better now because I can do it on my own terms, but I'm not a big pool person.
Right.
Not a big swimming in like bodies of water that I can't see to the bottom person.
Yeah. Yep.
So I really wasn't interested in going through a pipeline that swimming was a large part of.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of faith in my ability to pass that pipeline. So that weighed in a little bit.
Right.
You know, you go to RIP, you just swim 15 meters and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't see you as anything else. I mean, just knowing you now, I couldn't really see you. I could, you just seem like a ranger.
Yeah.
You know, like I used to get that all the time. Like, were you in Ranger Battalion? Because you're short and angry. It seems like you were there. And I'm like, I wasn't. It's you're short and angry.
Prerequisite at times.
Like, So what year did you get in?
84.
84?
Yeah. June of 84 is when I enlisted.
When did you retire?
2016.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fucking A.
Yeah.
So you got to walk me through the history of what all you did, because this is pretty impressive.
So I did 4 years in 175. So I was in a 90 millimeter recoilless rifle section. That was what we had at the time. I was actually one of two guys that wrote up the proposal to get the Carl Gustav. Mike Hall was the other one. We did it together actually, because he had started out. His Sergeant Major Hall started out as a 90 gunner, and we had a lot of conversations. It was a weird time because ammo for the 90 millimeter recoilless rifle had not been made since 1967.
Really?
So we had stockpiles of it, and then a bunch of it ended up getting sold to the Mexican federales because they had gun jeeps at the time, right? So we were always looking for a replacement, and the Carl G ended up being the obvious choice for it, right? But of course, everything was different back then. So it was battalion RIP at the time, not even regimental RIP. I was the second to last battalion RIP class. When I went to pre-ranger, I went to a regimental pre-ranger. We had each company had a weapons platoon, which was your anti-tank assets and your mortar assets and your fire direction center assets. I did 4 years there, and my original plan had been, all right, this is going to be a fun 4 years thing that I do something cool and adventurous, and then I'm going to get out, and my plan was to go into law enforcement. I wanted to be for some reason, I had read a lot of articles about the SWAT team in Denver, Colorado.
Right.
I'm like, that looks like a cool place to live, and mountains, and their SWAT team looks badass. I remember there was an article, they were one of the first SWAT teams to get an actual armored vehicle, right? And there was all these articles in newspapers and magazines about it. So that was my plan, is, okay, I'm going to get out after 4 and I'm going to go into law enforcement. So I went and took the test, took the written test and the physical test, and did the board you have to sit in front of to get on Savannah PD. And right after I did that, immediately after I did that, I got a letter that said, we're on a hiring freeze. So I ended up moving to Statesboro, Georgia, just down the road.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to go to college. So I started to take classes at Georgia Southern. I worked as a corrections officer, so I worked as a prison guard at night. And all this time, I wanted to keep a connection to the military.
Right.
So I was in 20th Group. And
out of Alabama, or where?
Out of Florida.
Oh, Florida.
Yeah, because I lived in between Savannah and then Statesboro, so it was a pretty easy clip to drive down to North Florida. So I was in 20th Group. Wanted to go and do the Q course as soon as possible. It didn't work out that way for a number of reasons I won't get into. But what ended up happening is, by the time I got out in 88, by the time Desert Storm happened, I still hadn't been to the Q course.
Right.
So we mobilized, went to Fort Bragg, and then 2 days later, I was in SFAS with no train up. They said, we're going to get to Fort Bragg. We're going to give you like a month to 6 weeks to train up, and then you're going to go to selection. And the second day there, they said, hey, there's going to be a bus downstairs tomorrow at 7. All you guys need to be on it. Well, where are we going? You're going to SFAS. When? Tomorrow. You're going to SFAS tomorrow.
Solid.
I was like, okay. So did selection, made it through selection, went in the 18 Charlie pipeline, finished the Q course, went into language school. And by that time, I'd figured out, you know what? I wasn't really applying myself in college.
Right.
Although I haven't worked in law enforcement, I've interacted with enough people in law enforcement now to know that maybe that's not what I want to do. And I really did miss all this. I miss regularly jumping out of airplanes and playing with explosives and being around like-minded individuals at the top of their game. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to go back to that life. I'm going to stay on active duty. So notified 20th group. They were very supportive. I got a letter of acceptance to 7th group. I had to retake the ASVAB test because, yeah, that was kind of weird. Because
after the Q course?
Yeah, so I took
so weird
after the Q course as a Ranger qualified, SF qualified, language qualified staff sergeant. I had to retake the ASVAB test.
What would have happened if you'd boloed that thing, like gotten a 12?
That's a good question. Because you have to have a 110 to get into SF. Yeah. What if I would have got a 109, but I had an SF tab?
Sorry, bud.
Sorry.
Sorry, bud.
You're going to cook and baker school. I don't know what would have happened. So I had to retake the ASVAB test. I went back through MEPS again.
What?
Yeah. So I'm in MEPS with all these people.
Did you do the duck walk in your underwear?
All
Nice.
that shit. Yeah. All that bullshit I still had to do. So it was crazy, with all these people who were in high school. And I'm in there doing
You're like fucking blowing my mind. That makes no sense.
Were you like locking up the kids in MEPS?
I didn't say shit, but it was, you have all the, that's when I realized, because, again, I'm in civilian clothes. That's when I realized how many fucking smarmy fucking E5s work at fucking MEPS.
Great.
And they don't know who you are. You're just, and they figure, oh, he's a little bit older, which means he probably failed out of college and he has nothing fucking going on in his life, right?
Right.
So that's why he's here. Went to 7th group as an 18 Charlie and enjoyed it immensely, but wanted something a little bit different and really respected the medics on my team that I'd work with. And
you respected the 18 Deltas.
Yeah, tremendously. Because as an 18 Charlie, I would look at the 18 Deltas and I'm like, people will question me.
Yeah.
The team sergeant and the warrant, they'll question me about engineer shit. They'll question the Bravo about Bravo shit. They'll maybe even question the Echo about Echo shit. Nobody ever questions the medic.
Yeah, you're right.
Like Doc, everybody looks at Doc and they go, Doc's an expert.
He's good. Yeah.
Doc's, we're not going to question Doc. Right. Whatever Doc says, it's good. And plus, Doc's always doing his real job.
Right.
Because people are always really getting hurt. Right. I'm carrying around blocks of fucking wood, pretending that they're C4.
Right.
He's got real injured people all the time. Right. And plus, I was really big. I was starting to kind of rediscover the higher cerebral functions in my brain and really enjoy mental challenges and things like that. And I was always asking the medic questions. He's like, you should go to the medic course. You should go to the medic course. And ultimately, I had some personal shit that went down. And I'm like, you know what? I need to get away from Fort Bragg. Right. This is when the medic course was still here in San Antonio. Yeah. So I said, all right, now's the time. Now's the time for me to go. So put in the paperwork.
What year was that?
That was 90, end of 94 was when I did the paperwork. Okay. So I started the 300 F1 course here in San Antonio in 95.
Right. So back to my dad, he was a medic in battalion. He went to he was in the first group of Rangers that they sent to 300 F1.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah. And my dad was the honor grad. So it was like a Top Gun scenario.
Right.
What year was that?
That was we moved down here 85. 84, 85.
Doc Krumick was in his class. He was a medic in my company.
He went to the course in like 82 or 83. We moved down here for him to be an instructor.
That was about the time.
Yeah. Oh, he was an instructor.
He was an instructor here.
Yeah, so because he'd been and was like the honor grad, they were like, well, you're not SF qualified, but you can be an instructor at the course because you killed the course.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we lived in San Antonio and my dad was an instructor at 300 F1 as a Ranger, so to speak. But yeah, in that same time, I think he was there like 84, 85-ish to like 87, 88-ish.
Okay. We had one Ranger in my class. There were two in the class behind me.
Yeah.
So, and there were a couple guys in my class, guys like Rhodey Fields, who had gone through as a ranger, and now we're going back through again as a long tabber. So Rhodey had gone through 300 F1 as a ranger, and then I don't remember if he had been 18 Delta and then got bumped to 18 Bravo. I think he actually did. So Rhodey, if you're watching this and I'm speaking out of turn, send me a nasty text.
So for all the listeners out there in the 18 series category of Special Forces Military Occupational Skill, it's an MOS, right? So 18 Echo is a comms guy, 18 Delta is a medic, 18 Charlie is an engineer, 18 Bravo is a weapons guy, 18 Alpha is the team leader, so is the officer. And then you have, 180s and some other things out there that we could go into and explain. But just for context, when we're throwing these things out, and 300 F1 is basically
short course. Yeah, so it's 2/3 of the SOF Medic course. So it's because at the time they figured, okay,
without trauma and stuff like
Ranger
that, right?
medics and CLIDCs, they don't need the more advanced. They don't need to know how to spin down feces and look for parasites and all that shit.
Which I would like to do now.
Yeah.
If I had that lab here, that'd be good. Yeah.
You just want the ether.
So you reclassed as 18 Delta.
Yeah.
And
went back to the same battalion, 7th Group, and then continued to do counter-narc stuff for a few years. And I had already figured out at that point, I'm like, I dig this medicine thing.
Right.
So this is where my future lies. Like, I don't want to be a warrant. I don't want to be a team sergeant. I want to go to PA school. And I wanted to go to PA school. And I knew I was going to have one shot to apply because they were changing the standards the very next year.
Right.
They were going to put a cap on time and service and a cap on age the next year. So I was going to have one shot to apply. And it was after I'd been back on a team for like 2 years. And this was a weird time because the internet was new, but was there, right? So you could go to a website and see what the prereqs were. But you also, the way you were supposed to do a PA packet back then is every hospital had a PA branch liaison, and they would have an office, and outside their office would be these thick packets. And the thing you attach to the door, right? And you would grab one of these packets and you would fill it out with a Skillcraft pen and mail it in, along with your transcripts and everything else.
Whoa.
Right? We were right on the cusp of everything kind of switching over to internet. And I'm reading the packet and it says you have to have 2 full semesters of anatomy and physiology. Well, I had 1 because I had 1 from the 18 Delta course. Right. So I didn't have 2. So I called the branch and I said, hey, so the website, I don't even think I called it a website then. I said, so the intranet, because that was like a new thing, says that I only need 1. This says I need 2. Which is right? And they said, the packet's right. And I was thinking, that doesn't make sense because the packet was printed 2 years ago and they just put their website up 6 months ago. So then I said, okay, but is that at the time I show up for the course or the time I apply? And they said, it's if you submit your application and you don't have both of them, your application will be returned and you won't get in. And which I found out later was not true. Because Larry Wyatt applied to PA school the same year, same condition that I was in, and he got in. I had just pissed off the person I was talking to on the phone.
That makes sense.
Because I was being a dick.
Right.
So I was being a cocky sergeant first class, 18 Delta, and speaking to a major who I thought was beneath me. And that was the way you're not getting in. So I ended up halving. My only choice was to apply to medical school. So I went to Campbell University to finish my undergrad and took my MCAT and did everything. Applications, sent all my applications and secondary applications and the interview process. I was in the process of the interview process when 9/11 happened. And I was actually in La Rondia, Colombia when 9/11 happened. And 2 days before that, I'd been on a sat phone, like checking on my applications and everything else. And got picked up. Almost decided not to go, had a very wise sergeant major talk me into, don't.
Going.
Yeah, he said, you need to go because we're 7th Group and we're not going anywhere for a while. And you're going to end up regretting this.
Right.
You're going to if you don't go, you're going to end up regretting it. And he said, in the long run, You're going to be of more use to the community if you come back as a physician who has a fucking clue what we do. Right? Because that's our challenge, is getting a physician who's not only qualified to do what he does, but knows what the fuck we do. Because usually, it's like anything. By the time the doc is trained up and gets it, it's time for him to leave.
Yep.
Right? So went to medical school at USIS and did residency in San Antonio here in emergency medicine, which was I got when I went to the Joint Medical Augmentation Unit, I got asked on my interview what the worst unit I'd ever been in the military was, and I was in residency in AMED, and I said, absolutely, it's the one I'm in right now. So that was an interesting experience. It's like the seamy underbelly of the military. Like you turn over a rock and all the creepy crawly fucking things that you just absolutely detest are there. That's what AMED, that's my version of what AMED is like. Yeah. It's like all the fuckers have been hiding under a rock to get out of deployment and fucking.
That's where
maximizing what they get out of the military as opposed to what they give back. So they're all hiding under that fucking rock.
Same as like, we call it the bending beltway.
Yeah.
Where a guy will go from like, I work at the AT4 range for basic training. Now I'm a jump master instructor.
Yeah.
Now I work at Pathfinder.
And then I'm gonna go work at Building 2 for a couple of years. Yeah.
Exact same shit.
Yeah.
So what year did you graduate from medical school in?
2006 medical school, residency 2009, and then I was back at Bragg working at WOMAC and assigned to the JMAU in 2009, and then did 3 years there at Bragg, and then my last 3 years at Hood. Stayed in the unit the whole time and did 5 deployments with the unit.
Holy shit, that's wild. So that's how you ended up. That's how I was going to ask you. It's like, how'd you end up in Austin?
It's I knew I wanted to get back to Texas. My wife's from Texas.
Right.
My kids, who primarily live with their birth mother, are here in Texas, so I wanted to be close to them. And I knew that I had Texas residency and I wanted to settle in Texas. So I knew that glide into the landing pattern of retirement, I wanted to be in Texas.
And where do you practice now?
So I don't practice clinic. As of the last 12 months, I don't practice clinically at all.
You don't?
No. So I was practicing. I got out of active duty. I got a full-time EM job. Paid really well, and I was really miserable. And then moved to a different hospital system, was a little bit happier there. But because of kind of the extracurricular stuff that I have going on, I was still doing some reality TV stuff, some docu-reality stuff. Right. I was still doing stuff. At the time, I was working for Sheepdog Response, so I was teaching courses for them. And I had other irons in the fire. And they're like, well, if you're not going to be able to commit to like just you're going to work when we schedule you, then we're going to have to make you part-time. And I was like, fine, I don't care.
Right.
So they made me part-time. And then right after making me part-time, they're like, oh, we've overhired and we don't have enough shifts for the people that are full-time. Right. So bye. We'll keep your credentials, but bye. So I started doing what they call locums work, which is you work with an agency and you submit all your credentialing stuff to them, and then they get you credentialed at hospitals potentially all over the country or all over the state. So I was credentialed at 3 or 4 different of the Methodist hospitals here in San Antonio, and I was doing what they call locum shifts. So, I'd get an email like a month in advance. Hey, we've got 2 open shifts right here. Do you want to come down and work? I'd come down, check into a hotel, work 3 days in a row, and then go back home.
As like an emergency room or? Okay.
Yeah. And that's easy to do in emergency medicine because it's not, you don't have any continuity of practice, right? Unlike an FM or an IM or somebody. Right. EM physicians and surgeons can usually do locums pretty easy because, they'll do just what they call trauma call. Surgeons will do what they call trauma call. So I did that for a while. And then up to the first couple of months of COVID, I was still doing it. And then about month 2, month 3 of COVID, all ER censuses in the country dropped to about 30% of normal because only the people who really should be going to emergency rooms now were going to emergency rooms.
Right.
Unlike all of the, my shoulders hurt for 3 years, but I'm just tired of it. Those guys weren't going to the emergency room anymore. So they're like, okay, we don't have shifts, so we got to cut everybody. So obviously locums guys were the first ones to get cut.
Right.
And then 12 months went by and they notified me and said, hey, you haven't worked a shift in 12 months, so you need to voluntarily pull your credentials. And I've got other things going on, so I don't need it.
Right.
So, and honestly, I was kind of, there's a lot of burnout in EM. And I was kind of getting to that point anyway, that I was approaching burnout. And I have a little bit of ADHD. I mean, obviously, I changed MOSs and vehicles and living locations so often. I've got a little bit of ADHD, so I was ready for something else.
Yeah, but you graduated from medical school. So ADHD, I don't know if, but maybe just it.
But to this day, I think between med school and residency and boards and retaking boards, because you have to recertify after 10 years, I have a hard time sitting down and reading anything now.
Really?
Yeah, like I just don't. I start to come out of my skin. I don't even read fiction anymore. Yeah. I mean, it's just, the last thing I read was Hicks and Gracie's autobiography.
Right.
I have a hard time reading anything now. It's just, I think I have PTSD from all those years that I spent in books.
I have a question. Like, I'm pretty ignorant in terms of like the pipeline to become a doc, like a no shit provider. So when you go to medical school, at what point in that process do you say, I want to be, a proctologist, or I want to go into pediatrics or whatever? And does that affect what kind of a doc you can become in the Army?
Great question. So the way that I can only speak from the USIS perspective, right? Although, I mean, it's kind of blanket for everybody. So you go into medical school.
And USIS is?
Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. So that's the DOD medical school that they used to try to shut down every 2 years. When I went to medical school, I knew that that emergency medicine was at the time number one. That was about 60%, and then a family medicine about 40%. And then the longer that I was in medical school, by the time I was in fourth year and actually applying to residencies, I was 90-10, right? Mm-hmm. Like I knew I wanted to do emergency medicine because I knew that's where I was going to be able to provide the most good for the community. And it was just a better fit for me personality-wise, right? Again, a little bit because of the ADHD.
Right.
The idea of having the same patient come in every couple of months and still not listening to me when I'm telling them to lose weight, it was going to just drive me crazy. But in answer to your question, so around third year is when you got to start thinking about it.
Right.
Fourth year is when you got to start putting in applications for it. But even some people will do what they call transitional intern years, which is basically this vanilla generic intern year where they're not part of, it used to be way back in the day. So if we go back to like 50s, 60s, even 70s, you graduated medical school and then you went and did an intern year, and all intern years were created equal. They were all the same, right? You were an intern, and then while you were an intern year, you applied to a residency in whatever residency that you wanted to do, because they expected that intern year was where you would actually figure that out, right? And it's not that way anymore. So now intern year is combined with residency, and it's all one thing now, right? Unless you do a transitional.
In that process, is emergency medicine like, I want to fly F-15's version of the Air Force Academy where everybody wants it, but like, you're probably not going to get that? Or is it?
It's continuously EM is the most competitive in the military. Well, okay, I won't say the absolute, like somebody graduates absolute top of their class. Ophthalmology, believe it or not, is probably, in my opinion, one of the hardest specialties to get into.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
So it's everything about being a surgeon. And I mean, just think about how important the eye is and how intricate the eye is. You got to be really on your game to get ophtho. I mean, those are significant. They're always top 10% of med school classes. You're never going to see a bottom third person get ophtho. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Surgery is obviously really competitive. Internal medicine and family medicine in military residencies, I don't think they've filled them up, their slots, in a while. So, I mean, I hate to use the term non-competitive, but I mean, when you've got, 30 slots and 28 applicants, or should I say 28 qualified applicants maybe. But EM, we consistently turn away people that apply to EM that are number one picks for other residencies. or that, they won't get into us this year because it's like, God, everybody we had our choice of was top of their class and was just amazing. So you're just going to have to apply next year because you just barely missed it. So you're going to have to go do a transitional year and then hit us up next year.
Okay, so you can do that.
You can do that. Yeah. Cool. And some people do. And that's when I was chair of emergency medicine at Darnell, I had multiple applicants that had done a transitional year.
I like how you just threw that in there.
And it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. It wasn't because I was smart. It was because I was an asshole. Literally, that's why I got the job. Is because it basically all of my peers in the department said, we need an asshole to have this job because that needs to be the outward projection. We need somebody that's going to fight other departments.
Right.
And nobody likes to fight like Mike likes to fight. So we know he will always fight. They're like, Mike will fight when there's not even a fight.
Right.
And we want that. We want every time he enters a room and he's talking to other departments for everybody to be on the defensive because then that's what's going to protect our people. And that was my leadership philosophy when I had that job. But we consistently would have applicants that had done maybe a transitional year and then gone to do like a utilization tour. So they were working at some tank unit or artillery unit on Fort Hood, and they had been for a couple of years, maybe had a deployment under their belt, and now they were applying to get into emergency medicine. So it's always a really competitive specialty. Now, that being said, I was middle third of my class. A lot of the reason that I was a competitive applicant was because of my 16 pieces of flair on my uniform. Right. It was, hey, this is a guy who wants to do operational medicine. Right. He's got all these gizzies. And so because of that, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and he didn't do some wazoo research project during medical school, but we're going to give him a few more points, because of what he's already given to the military. Because I had 17 years enlisted when I went to med school. So
you weren't tired?
Yeah, I'm always tired. I'm always fucking tired.
If at my 17-year mark, they would have been like, hey, you have to go to like an 8-day long course on counting, on separating blue and red marbles, I'd have been like,
but I think because it was different, right? It was like, this is a new adventure. Like, and it was, I got to, I moved to Bethesda, Maryland, where I lived in Rockville actually, but so new place to live. I'm away from Fort Bragg. I'm living in the nation's capital. It's before you figure out what a fucking cesspool it is.
Right.
And I'm doing something different. I'm going to school. I'm every morning at 6 a.m. I'm on the train riding into Bethesda in Class B uniform, to go to class. So it was something that was interesting and different for me. So I think the change of scenery had a lot to do with kind of keeping me engaged and interested.
So with Sheepdog, were you teaching their like medical portions, obviously?
Yeah, we had. So they didn't have any type of medical course when I came on board. And I started, at the time, I called it SOTEC, Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care. And that's the course that I taught, which is basically my version of TCCC.
Right.
I changed, instead of the March mnemonic, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with, I changed it to what I called the React 911 mnemonic, which was the one that I used because I thought it was a little bit more tailored to civilian use. And I taught it a little bit more civilian based. And I taught it as a 2.5-day course. Ultimately, I left to go do other things and left on great terms, still loved Tim and loved Sheepdog and everything that they represent and what they do. And Matt Smith took over and is teaching what they call their tactical trauma response course, I believe is what they call it.
Well, and here's it's a shift in topic, which is, from your perspective, one of the things that we constantly talk about are the psychology, not only the mental health, but the physical health of we'll call it the especially the GWOT guys. Like as they start to age, we kind of have these same kind of problems, right?
Yeah.
Which is like
low T, difficulty sleeping. Yeah. Secondary TBI, CTE effects.
Yeah. So when you're talking to guys out there in the community, do you find that these are they're kind of standard problems that guys are facing as they get a little bit older?
Yeah.
And then what have you seen? What are those? And then tell us about, some of the things that guys can do in order to help with those things.
So low T. So we have an epidemic of low T societally.
Like, what do you think that's from? Because I
think diet drives a lot of it. I think processed food, not getting enough healthy protein.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get into the whole argument about soy and whatever. Yeah. It's we're getting more and more and more into processed food.
Right.
Number one, if you think about the amount, so I never sat down when I was growing up. I never sat down to a meal that there wasn't a cold glass of milk right there. Right. So, other things. So another epidemic that we have, vitamin D deficiency, because people aren't drinking milk. Right. Osteopenia, osteoporosis.
What's osteopenia?
So it's the early stage of osteoporosis.
Okay.
So basically your bones aren't calcified enough. So we're seeing that, which predominantly was a disease that you thought of the 90-pound female smoker who didn't do a lot of axial loading, so she wasn't remodeling her skeleton all the time, right? Now it's a problem among men too. I mean, I've seen a lot of fractures in younger people, and you look at their x-rays and it's like their bones just don't even look as calcified as like mine or yours would next to it.
Their bone density is not.
Their bone density is not the same. And I think, again, it's vitamin D deficiency. It's not getting the calcium in their diet. And I don't think people are getting enough healthy protein. Also, I think we're doing a lot of things. So 60% of adults are sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge factor. That cannot be overstated in its impact on testosterone. So that undoubtedly, even in somebody who's eating a healthy diet, maybe working out, if they're not sleeping right, their cortisol is up, their testosterone is down. I mean, it is what it is.
My life.
Screen time.
Yeah.
I think we're going to find out over time that screen time plays a part in that, just because, everything that you're doing on that screen is the reason we're addicted to those screens is a lot of it has to do with dopamine hit, right? Yep. So I get a like. I get 500 likes on my post. That's a dopamine hit, right? So you're getting all these dopamine hits and everything else, but you're also, because of the light wavelength and everything else, what are you doing to the neurohormonal axis in your brain? So that's impacting it as well. So it's multi, I can't pin it down to one single thing.
Right.
So societally, we already have the problem.
Right.
Now you look at our population, you look at GWOT vets. Now we're going to compound that even more. We were all in a reverse cycle when we were deployed. Okay. That takes a huge toll on the hormonal axis over time, right? So that's going to fuck up your testosterone. Now, add TBI and CTE to that.
Right.
That's another big hit to your testosterone. Okay. Now add to that you were in a high testosterone job and did a lot of high testosterone stuff, and you're a little bit more sensitive to even a minute decrease in your testosterone because you're used to living at this level.
Right.
So maybe now you even just go to average level or average for your age. That doesn't feel right.
Right.
Psst. Caleb, did you know with Black Rifle Coffee's Coffee Club subscription, you can get fresh coffee shipped to you every month? What? You don't even have to go to the store. Whoa. You don't even have to leave your bed.
What? Wow. How did you get in here? You might want to go ahead and join the Black Rifle Coffee Club subscription before one of these guys shows up at your place.
Right? Because you were living here.
Yeah.
Right? This is the level that you're living at. So this is somebody said that, low T was the Agent Orange of our generation, which I don't agree with. I think burn pits are the Agent Orange of our generation, right? But low T is certainly, that's the PTSD of our generation.
Right.
Because we've kind of removed the stigma from PTSD, right? Yeah. We're not going through what the Vietnam era guys had to go through, thank God. But the low T thing is, there is some stigma attached to that. Oh, you just want to get jacked.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you just fucking accept that you're old, right?
Yeah.
You just want to be jacked and fucking, that's all you want, right? And it's like, no, I want to have good quality of life.
Right.
So there's an online resource that everybody can check out. It's called an Adams score.
Right.
So Adam, just like Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
So if you Google Adams score,
Right.
and it'll give you some questions. You answer those questions, it's going to give you a score. That's going to tell you clinically, doesn't tell you necessarily where your T is, but it'll tell you clinically if you're symptomatic. Okay? So that's important. And it's about libido, sleep, energy levels, appetite, exercise tolerance, all that. In 2012 is when I first identified that I was having issues. And the first two things that I noticed were libido and exercise tolerance. Because I always had issues with sleep. So that was nothing fucking new. And I reached out to some people that I knew that had trained in hormone replacement. And they said, go to this website, check your Adams score, let me know what you get. Send it back. All right, clinically, you look like it. Let's get your levels checked. Got my levels checked. I still wanted to do it through the Army because I didn't want that feeling like I was doing something behind the Army's back and I was going to get in trouble. So I made an appointment. My physician at the time was a family medicine second-year resident who, God bless him, this is far and beyond his scope of practice.
Right.
And he said that, this is far and beyond my scope of practice. I'm going to bring in a urologist and ask him what he thinks. The urologist was a urologist concentrated on the surgical aspect of urology. He's like, this isn't really my thing either. I don't know. And they only wanted to look at the two mistakes that they were making is they were only looking at my total testosterone, number one. And number two, they were looking at age adjusted.
Right.
Age adjusted is just throw that shit out the fucking window.
Really?
Okay? Because age adjusted doesn't tell you what's normal, it tells you what's average. Of course it's average because everybody's testosterone goes down as they get older, right? And it's a range too. It's a huge range. So pinning your hat on age adjusted, you're doing the patient a disservice because I don't want to feel like an average 55-year-old. I want to feel, I know I'm never going to feel as good as I did at 25 or 35, but I still want to kick ass and I still want to do strength and conditioning 4 to 5 times a week. And I still want to go to jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 times a week.
Right.
And then I still want to have enough energy on my day off to go on a 10-mile mountain bike ride.
Right.
And I don't want shit to interfere with that.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of risk benefit. What I encourage everybody to do, if you think you're in this category, first, go take the Adams score.
Right.
Second, only go to a physician who's been trained in hormone replacement. So there's a lot of fly-by-night fuckers out there.
Yeah, that's a good question because how do you actually differentiate between a good physician or a bad physician or somebody that's qualified in hormone replacement?
So you ask,
right?
And the length of their answer is inversely proportionate to the validity of their answer.
Got it.
So if I ask you, what's your training in hormone replacement?
Right.
And you talk for 3 minutes, you probably didn't say anything worthwhile. If I ask you and you say, I attended X course and I took the X board exam,
right,
which took you like 15 seconds to say, you're my guy.
Got it.
Okay. Guys that blah, 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 and I read this and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I don't, it's like that scene in, what's the DiCaprio movie where he's a spy. He's working with that one Middle Eastern intelligence agency. And he goes, do you know this man?
Yeah.
And he goes, no. And he goes, if your answer had been any longer than one word, it would have been suspect. Right? I would have known that you were just making shit up.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I feel about a lot of the people that are doing this. And they're not doing the tests that you should do. There's a lot of things you have to test. If you came to me, and I know more than most physicians about hormone replacement, but I won't do it because I haven't attended a formal training block.
Right.
And I haven't taken a board exam on it. I was going to do that 2 years ago and COVID torpedoed it. So I still plan on doing that at some point because it's a practice that I want to do because I think it's important. But if you came to me and I was like, your last hope, like you got to help at least get me started on this. I would run a battery of tests. I would check your thyroid. I would check your cortisol levels. I would check your standard blood work, check your electrolytes, because there might be something else there. And people have been misdiagnosed and unscrupulous physicians. So we were talking about the online forum with a bunch of SF guys, right? I've had guys in there say that, oh yeah, I went to my doctor, I asked him to run the test, and he said, screw it, if you just want to get jacked, I'll write you for it right now.
Right.
And I said, that's literally the worst physician practicing.
Yeah.
You need to get as far the fuck away from him as you can.
Right.
I'm like, because who knows what you have? There was one case where a guy He had exercise intolerance. He felt like he was winded all the time. Felt tired all the time. Some doctor put him on testosterone. He's like, I feel a little bit better, but not a lot better. This went on for a while. Come to find out, he had a tumor in his fucking chest.
Whoa. Right.
That was his issue.
Yeah.
Right? These are things that could have been figured out. Right? He might not have identified that there was a tumor, but he would have identified, well, it's not your testosterone. We need to keep looking.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe you do need a PET scan or something like that,
Well, and I've heard so many different things because, this obviously is a conversation that happens all the time. I mean, I think, we hit on it all the time, in group circumstances, whether it's like at the dinner table or, sitting at a bar, whatever it might be. And I hear this a lot and I don't actually know what it means. Adrenal fatigue. I don't know what that is.
It's a myth.
I have no fucking, okay.
The short answer is it's a myth.
Got it. Okay.
So adrenal fatigue is there's a lot of bogus diagnoses that get thrown out there.
Wait, what does it mean?
So adrenal fatigue just means you're tired. Now,
okay. Have you heard this? Am I the only crazy fucker?
Basically that it means what I understood from my shithouse doctor perspective was adrenal fatigue was like you have so many hits of adrenaline throughout your career that your body just doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not really, because typically on a typical day for me, even going to the gym and doing a hard workout, I won't get an adrenaline spike.
Right.
Because what exertion isn't what kicks off your adrenaline. Right. It's fight or flight is what kicks off adrenaline. So the only true way to know if you have adrenal fatigue is if I put a gun in your face and your mouth doesn't get dry and your pupils don't dilate. You've got adrenal fatigue.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But what people call people overestimate how much they're using adrenaline. You're using adrenaline a lot less than you think. When you're towing the ramp at 16 grand, there's adrenaline involved. Right. When you're about to go down the rope onto the X, there's adrenaline involved. Right. Tire flipping, no adrenaline. Right. Typically, even when I'm rolling in jiu-jitsu, there might be small adrenaline spikes, when I'm evading a submission or I think I'm about to get a submission, but it's not what people think it is. So there's a few kind of what I call, I won't say adrenal fatigue is a complete bullshit diagnosis. I'll say it's a trash can diagnosis. It doesn't really mean anything.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't mean anything, and there's really, how are you going to prove it?
So this is why I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because I pressed on this where I'm like, I just don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean? And then who is telling you?
So adrenal fatigue is one. Leaky gut is another.
Oh man, I hear that one all the time too.
Leaky gut's non-existent. So
What does that mean?
It means nothing. It's complete bullshit. So you don't even want to get me started on chronic Lyme.
Right.
So
I've had Lyme.
Yeah. So people get Lyme disease, and I'll get hate mail for this. So people get Lyme disease.
Yep.
Some people have permanent damage from it.
Right.
Right. And you get what's called sequelae of Lyme. Right. So you might continue to have some numbness in your fingertips or, some weird thing.
Yeah.
What is not real is chronic infection. That, the infection persists for years. So you have to continue to get antibiotic treatments and vitamin infusions and all that stuff. That's not a thing. You have sequelae of Lyme that occasionally flares up, and it's secondary to your own immune system. It's not secondary to a continued infection, which is the myth that keeps getting perpetuated. And there's a physician by the name of Horowitz who's made a lot of money, like millions of dollars.
Oh yeah, I've read
writing books and everything else about chronic Lyme.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking
about.
People
fly, and it's
because when I had Lyme, I got it in the spring. Not to cut you off, but I got it in the spring, so I had to go down the rabbit hole. Well, first, I had to request the test. I was like, well, I have this, bullseye rash.
Yeah, the bullseye rash in
the middle of my stomach. And then I got a bunch of blood work done. And they're like, well, you're very allergic to red meat. So I got the Lone Star tick that it's just alpha gal, which is the variant that actually gives you allergic reaction to red meat or meat. So I was off red meat for 8 months. And then I took a round of antibiotics, but I was still allergic. So I'd go back and get another. So I just cleared it last month.
Yeah. So a lot of times what happens when you get those multiple rounds of antibiotics is it's not that you're getting the antibiotic and it's killing organisms. Almost all antibiotics have a secondary anti-inflammatory effect. So what you're really getting the benefit of is the anti-inflammatory effect.
Interesting.
Yeah. In most cases.
Right.
In most cases.
Right.
Now, am I going to say that like everybody completely eradicates the infection with one run of antibiotics and they might not need another one and it might not be a prolonged course like yours was? No, I'm absolutely not saying that. And I know people, I know a professional fighter in the UFC who has chronic sequelae of Lyme. I won't say he has chronic Lyme because I know that he still has, instances where when his body gets susceptible, he'll have flares.
Right.
But it's funny because there's a whole rabbit hole on chronic Lyme you can get into.
Oh my gosh.
And what's really funny is they say, well, the medical establishment is hiding this. And it's like, if you look at how much the doctors who are saying it's real are making,
right?
Why would we hide it?
Right.
That's a fucking cash cow.
Yeah.
Horowitz built his beach house on that shit, right? We can make a lot of money from that. So why would, if by all means, if we were who you think we are, we would be saying everybody's got it. And the part of the problem is too, is the tests that they give have an overwhelming number of false positives.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you can give the Lyme test to somebody who's never even been in a tick endemic region.
Right.
And they might show up positive on the test.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that from a number of people going,
Yeah.
Because I've been dealing with this for
these guys who call themselves Lyme literate physicians.
Right.
This is what they'll tell you. Okay. So if clinically it looks like you have it, so same as the Adams score, they'll go, if clinically it looks like you have it, you have it. Or if the test is positive, you have it. We don't need both of those things. In fact, we really don't need either of those things. Just if I say you have it, you basically have it.
Right.
Yeah. So, and they'll say, oh, clinically is much more important. And again, much like testosterone, there was a woman who died who had multiple sclerosis. It was diagnosed as chronic Lyme. It was treated with multiple rounds of antibiotics over about a 3-year period and ultimately died of complications from her MS.
Right.
They've missed MS, cancers,
right.
A lot of things because they've been treating, oh, you have chronic Lyme.
Right.
And it became this, a couple of celebrities got it, so it became a little bit of a fad disease.
Lyme.
Yeah. Chronic Lyme especially, right?
Oh, man. Brad Pitt, I want that.
I want that.
Well, it's all it takes. I've noticed that all it takes is somebody going on The View and saying something.
Right.
And it will sway public opinion medically. I literally had a trauma patient come in one time and I was sending him to the CAT scanner. And for acute trauma, CAT scan is the gold standard, right? For stroke and for a lot of other soft tissue and chronic stuff, MRI is the gold standard. So we're doing what we always do, CT head to toe, with PO and IV contrast, boom. And I don't know, I think we'd stop doing PO, oral contrast at that point. But patient's daughter arrives and says, well, I want an MRI. And I said, well, there's MRI machines not even being manned this time of night.
Right.
Like there's no indication for an MRI. Well, an MRI is better than a CT. Looks me in the eye and says, an MRI is better than a CT. And I said, what do you mean? That's like saying a pizza is better than a steak.
Right.
Or that's like saying cheesecake is better than a ripe tomato. I don't know what that means. Like they're kind of in the same ballpark, but they don't really do the same thing. And finally, after this back and forth, I'm like, why are you so convinced that the MRI is better? And she said, well, I saw it on The View.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what was the context? She said, I don't remember. And I go, okay, I'll tell you what, why don't you let me do medicine and let the Karens do Karen shit. All right. We're getting the CT.
Yeah. So there's, the adrenal fatigue. I've heard that one a lot.
Yeah.
Leaky gut. I've heard that one a lot.
Yeah.
My big thing that is uniform across the board, and we were having this debate the other night, which was sleep. And one of my buddies who's never in the military, he was at the dinner table with us, and we were talking about sleep. All of us are like, we all have very similar backgrounds. We're all about the same age. Then he was the same age. He's like, guys, I don't think this is like an actual military thing. I think it's an age and male thing. Because he's like, I can't fucking sleep either.
Mhm.
We're all the same age. And he's like, I don't think it's a military thing. I think it's like, I can't sleep either. I'm like up in 6 hours, ready to go. He's like, I think it's just like the stress of male life in America. Like when you have a family, it depends on you. You're paying mortgages. You're going to work every day. You're in the cycle of life. So that's more of my question is, do you think that it's more acute in our community, or do you think it's also just compounded by, the external variables of our history, or do you think it's just male aging?
Yeah, I think it's all the above.
All the above.
Yeah, it's all compounded on it. And you mentioned sleep. There's a whole chapter in my book on sleep because of how important.
That's right. Your book, which I think is important for us to talk about, which is, what's the name of your book and where
Honed.
can people buy it?
Yeah, the name of the book is Honed: Finding Your Edge as a Man Over 40.
Yep.
Did you read it?
No.
Okay.
But you sent it to me.
I sent it to you.
It's on my desk, much like the 12 other books that are on my desk.
That's okay, man.
Yeah.
I know you get a lot of them, so I'm not.
No.
Yeah.
There's like 3 books that are sitting on my desk that I have to read. They're all from SF guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's no offense to the other guys that send me books, but like I front load the SF guys as far as their books. But just like you, to be completely transparent, my life of reading is basically it doesn't exist. If it's not on Audible, it doesn't get done. Because,
and my book won't be on Audible for probably another 6 to 8 months.
Well, good. When it comes out, then I'll be sure to do it.
I'm gonna crush it when.
Yeah,
when
I gotta get the thing is, it's gonna cost me. I have to pay an upfront fee to do it, and then I got to go out to a sound studio in California to do the read. And so,
really, why do you have to go to a sound studio in California?
Because Scribe Media, who I used to publish, so plug for Scribe Media, fucking amazing organization.
Right.
They have a contract with us very specific. They said you can, if you want to find a local person to do it, that's fine.
Right.
But if I do it there, the editor's in the same room with me, so they already know it's going to be a lot easier that way. So I want to do it that way and get it done. But I need a little bit of this, and I need little bit of this to go do it. But
are you doing it? Are you?
I'm going to read it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read it.
You have a good voice for that. That's what I was going to say.
I mean,
you have a good voice.
I podcast and people listen to my podcast, so I'm kind of used to talking into a microphone anyway. And I think people are used to listening to me on their drive. So I think, and plus I have a lot of first person stories in there that it wouldn't make sense if somebody else was reading them. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So the entire chapter that you go into sleep, which is like, I know what I use. I know what works for me. Like, I don't do everything that I tell people to do all the time, because that's, it's do what I say, not what I do. But I know the biggest thing that's truly helped me is, one, I had to figure out the bed. Like, I had to figure out, like, am I comfortable sleeping? Because the other thing that I realized is, like, injuries. Like, that's the cycle of life here. It's like my shoulders are a little bit fucked up. Like my back's a little bit fucked up. Like everything's a little bit fucked up. So one of the reasons why I don't sleep as well as I used to is because I have more injuries. And over the course of your life, if you've used your body, and especially if you've been carrying weight around your shoulders for the good portion of your adult life, your back doesn't sleep like it used to sleep. And so I had to figure out the right bed to sleep in. The other thing is I get hot as fuck. It's not like sweating, but I can't use one of those memory foam beds because that thing, like, and everybody, I don't think this is just like a hormone issue. I think it's just like, man, if you sleep hot, which I always have, I think you guys probably remember if you're in a shipping container overseas, like, dude, I'd put that fucking AC unit on, like, if there was like a sub-Arctic level, it was like, put that thing on sub-Arctic, get it as cold as I could get it in there. And it's like blackout dark. And you'd sleep like the fucking dead. Like the dead. So now I'm like, well, now I just have to replicate that environment at home. So blackout curtains, as cold as I can make it without like freezing my wife out, because then it looks like she's going into the Arctic to go into a sleep.
We have blackout curtains in my house. We have dual. We have shades and then curtains.
Right.
So dual, and that's something that I started doing actually when I went back to Bragg, and I was working in residency. It wasn't an issue because my room in residency, I rented a room from a buddy of mine, and it just had one little tiny. I was the room over the garage, so I just had one little tiny window.
Right.
I just put tinfoil on it, and it wasn't an issue. When I got back to Bragg, I was living in an apartment right under a street lamp. and it had the regular, Venetian blind type things. So I got blackout. I got the ones, the self-adhesive blackouts.
Oh yeah,
and put them over, and then put curtains on top of that. So, dual blackouts has been a thing for me for a while. And we put them in our bedroom here. Also have a white noise machine.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about this in the chapter that 65 degrees is really kind of an ideal sleep temperature.
Right.
During snowpocalypse, our power was out for a day and a half, and our bedroom temperature actually went down to 65, and I got some of the best sleep ever. My wife thought we were going to freeze to death, and I'm like, it's 65. This is 65. Ideal sleep temperature. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Same thing with the mattress. So we have a sleep number bed. We got the highest end.
Same.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Guys will put all this money into their guns, into their car, and it's all this other bullshit. Okay. You spend a third of your life in that fucking bed.
Same.
And it dictates the whole rest of your goddamn day. You do not need to be trying to save money on low thread count sheets and your shitty mattress and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And you need to be changed every 5 to 10 years. Realistically, you need to be changing that mattress. So a good mattress, good sleep. And that's the biggest thing, to these guys that are having all the symptoms that I described in low T, start with your sleep. Right. If you start with your sleep, it could correct itself, right? Because here's the deal is when you're not sleeping. So your body says, we're not sleeping. Are we in some kind of weird pre-extinction migration? Is that why we're not sleeping? I don't know.
Right.
But hey, maybe it's not a good time to procreate.
Right.
So cortisol is going to go up because I need it to stay awake because I'm not sleeping enough.
Yep.
Testosterone is going to go down. Libido is going to go down because we don't need testosterone is an anabolic hormone, right? Well, we're in survival mode, so I'm not going to be building muscle during this time.
Right.
I don't need a high libido because we don't want to procreate because it feels like we're in some kind of weird extinction event.
Right.
That's the only way that your body can determine that. Right? Not determine, but interpret that data.
Right.
Is like something weird's going on.
Yeah.
It's not a good time for us right now in our life. So if you tell your body it is a good time for us, and I'm going to show you because I'm going to get enough sleep, and I'm going to clean up my diet and do all this other stuff. But sleep, to me, and that's why I put that chapter very, very early in the book, because I knew if I put it at the end of the book, people would read, okay, I need to eat so much protein. I need to do this many deadlifts. I need to go to jiu-jitsu. All right, fuck sleep chapter. I'm moving on, right? Because everybody's too impatient to read the sleep chapter.
And like getting good sleep is not sexy. You can't
not sexy.
You can't post about what a rad night's sleep you have.
I want to every time I get a good night's sleep where I'm like, dude, that's 7.5 hours. Like I want to post out like my PR. Like I want to post out like my deadlift PR.
With the sleep number, you can, so it gives you your sleep IQ every morning. Hey, look what I did, Posted my MyZone workout from yesterday. Here's my sleep number from last night, my sleep IQ. And the thing is people need to turn off devices. There's so much about sleep hygiene is go to bed earlier, turn off your devices, don't eat late, don't drink a lot late. Your bed is for two things: sexual intercourse and sleep.
Right.
Okay? It's not for playing fucking Scrabble. It's not for doing a crossword puzzle. It's not for balancing your fucking checkbook.
Yeah.
It's not for, binging the fucking Lost in Space marathon on Netflix.
It's really good though.
Which is out. I can't wait to see the new season.
The Expanse too, if you're into sci-fi.
I haven't seen The Expanse.
It's really good. It's really good.
A question about a sleep thing that I've recently done. I don't know if it's a placebo or if weighted blankets.
Masturbate. No.
Yeah,
I was trying to guess. It didn't.
People like weighted blankets. I feel a little bit suffocated by them, but a lot of people really like them.
Game changer for me.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife likes that, and I tried it, and I was like, I'm the same way. I'm like, man, if I just had my whoopee, just the poncho liner, you know how light that thing is. I'm like, I sleep like fucking
I don't like that.
Dead.
Yeah.
And also, if I could sleep in a straitjacket, I would love it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I have a pillow that I hug into my chest because otherwise I will fold my arms up and my hands go to sleep. And I've got nerve damage in both of my arms that's exacerbated if I do that. So,
yeah, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I've never heard that from anybody else. Yeah, I'll take a pillow and put it on my stomach and just do this because my hands will go to sleep depending on where they are. So I'll just
and I've had the EMG test done and I've got legit fucking nerve damage.
From what?
So everybody knows about your carpal tunnels. They're here, right? You also have what's called the cubital tunnels, which are here, right?
Right.
So I've got cubital tunnel impingement, and it's a combination of years of sleeping like that,
Right.
and doing things like firing in the prone,
Right.
continued vibrations. So my cubital tunnels are narrowed, so it impinges on the nerve. So it doesn't take a lot of stretch or pressure to just impinge that completely. And
Right.
then these fingers will go numb. I'll wake up in the night and these fingers are numb. So that's why I put the pillow on my chest, so I can't do that.
Right.
So I can't get my arms all the way up under me. So yeah, that's
Some
just
of
a modification that I have to make.
Some of the best sleep I get is flying on. I love to tuck my arms into the seatbelt.
Yeah.
And then put it between my legs. That's the best. That's why I'm like, I wish
Do you
I
have
could
a
mimic
burlap
that.
sack over your head for the effect?
When I was in the box this year, I got great rack.
Oh, so
Just
did
'cause
I.
was
When everybody's like, they're checking for claustrophobia when they
Yeah.
put you in the little tiny boxes at SERE. And I'm small enough where you can just like wedge your.
Yeah.
I remember this so well because I was like wedging my knees in there and then like resting my back. And then I fucking slept so well. And then one of my buddies was in the box, like right next to me, and he woke me up because he was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And he like, boom, boom, boom. And then the box opens up. And I was like, man, it sucks to be that guy. I need to go back to sleep.
I remember feeling guilty because like, same. I don't know who was next to me, but I heard he was not having a good time.
Yeah.
He was
Whereas me, I was
like, weird.
sleepy. I was like, this is great.
I
this is
sat
awesome.
cross,
Don't bother me.
right as I sat cross-legged, and of course, and your hands are flex cuffed. So what I figured out is I would put my elbows into my knees and my forehead on my hands like this, and I could sleep. Yeah, and it was really comfortable. And I would sleep. I was at the perfect depth of sleep that when I could hear them, they come around and do their checks.
Yeah.
And when I could hear the other doors slots opening, I would sit up. Sit all the way up straight so that I wasn't sleeping, when they came around to check on me.
Not sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I think mainly what I try to do is like the things and I'm sure there's a lot of data behind this, but it's like if I get 7.5 hours of sleep, I feel like might as well have 3 cups of coffee. Like I feel like so refreshed and available to like work and process information, and my brain is way more organized. If I'm below 7 hours, there's a huge distinct difference in performance. And I notice it right away because I like to work early in the morning. I like to knock out basically a huge amount of my organizational thought, like right away in the morning. Have a first cup of coffee and then do it. But the other thing I've noticed is squats. Like if I do like weighted, anything weighted, it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be like 135 pounds and just do like, 5 sets of 10. Just good form-based squats with weight. It's a life changer for me. If I do that a couple days a week, I feel like I can sleep better. I feel like I'm more intellectually, available to conquer different things. And it's interesting because I had like some like IT band thing going on for like 2 weeks or whatever before it went back down and I was back to doing squats. And I felt kind of dirty and like just kind of trashed, like, and I don't feel that good. Like I'll go for a run and I like to get, sunlight, do a half hour, 45 minutes or whatever. But nothing makes me feel like just doing squats 3 days a week, 2 to 3 days a week. I don't know what it is, but that's why I'm asking you.
Squats is a great exercise. Squats is one of the best exercises you can do. It's a whole. We think of it as a leg exercise, and it's not. It's a whole body exercise.
Right.
So it's working your entire chain. It's working your core. All right. It's working stabilization muscles. Not just. It's a strength exercise. It's also a power exercise.
Right.
It ends up being a muscular endurance exercise as well. Right. Because if you look at your heart rate tracing when you're doing squats, it's getting up there.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Because there's a huge oxygen demand that has to be met. So your body is having to compensate for that as well. It's skeletally, it's a great exercise because it's axial loading. So you have what's called Wolff's Law, which is as you break down bone through muscular movement and axial loading, you'll have microfractures in bone, which repair themselves, that then your bones then get stronger.
That's what that is.
Yeah, so we could do a whole conversation around Wolff's Law because Wolff's Law, much like earlier we were talking about.
Is this like a doctor, or are you talking about the actual animal?
The doctor. It was 2 Fs. Wolff, two Fs. I think he was. I don't know if he was a physician or a PhD.
You were going to ask that question.
Yeah. Right. It'd be a lot cooler if it was Wolff's Law. Right?
Yeah. I'm like,
This is Wolff's Law.
Hence the phrase, the legs feed the wolf, right? So it's Wolff's Law. The law of the wolf. The law of the pack.
The law of the wolf.
Wolff's Law and Wolff's Law is I won't get it. This is a whole rabbit hole we get into, but a lot of pseudoscience martial arts practitioners have tried to twist Wolff's Law into this. Oh, I need to be continually breaking my knuckles to get them to remodel.
Right.
That's not how Wolff's Law works.
Right.
Yeah. So Wolff's Law, there's never been any evidence that that's flawed for a number of reasons, not the least of which is, you see these guys they have all these big calluses and bony deposits on their knuckles.
Right.
So all that is arthritis.
Right.
Right. Because the knuckles are for punching when they're like this, but they're for doing stuff when they're like this.
Right.
So that deposit is going to get in the way.
Yeah.
That's going to be an issue. The other reason that it's bullshit and it doesn't do anything as far as protecting your hands for punching is that's not where the fractures occur. The fractures occur here. Okay? They occur in the long bones of your hand.
Right.
Right? So this is the equivalent of if I take a plastic drinking straw and then I dip the end in cement. And so the end is really nice and hard, but then I hit something really hard with that drinking straw, the drinking straw is still going to collapse.
Right.
Because I haven't done anything to make the tensile strength of the shaft any stronger.
Right.
Anyway, so that's a segue about Wolff's Law. But getting back to squats, squats are a great exercise. And I hate it so I hate leg presses. I hate it when I see people doing leg presses. I always say...
You mean like the slide?
They're sitting in the thing.
Sitting in the chair. Yeah, I don't
So
I don't
more
that.
bad things happen when people do leg presses because you end up lifting way more, loading yourself way more than you should.
Right.
Right? Because I think I can only squat 275, 285 maybe.
Right.
I could probably leg press. I can deadlift 305, so I could probably leg press 4 something.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not a good idea. I shouldn't be loading my knees with that much, right?
Yeah,
so you see these guys that they're in the middle of a leg press and their knees just bend the wrong way and all this other shit.
With Wolff's Law, that's what I tell people. You got to break those knees down.
Wolff's Law.
Wolff's Law.
Got to break that knee at least once.
At least once.
Tanya Harding, that's Wolff's Law. We're gonna break that shin.
Yeah, she's doing her a favor.
Yeah. I'm just trying to help you out. I'm trying to increase your bone density.
Wolff's
that's all
Law.
I'm doing here, right? And that's another way that martial artists kind of misinterpret Wolff's Law is the Muay Thai guys who kick banana trees, right? They kicked banana trees before we had heavy bags.
Right.
The banana tree is not like kicking a maple tree or an oak tree. It feels like a heavy bag. It's very squishy, right? So the whole purpose of it wasn't to remodel that bone. It was actually to desensitize
Nerves.
the nerves so that you could tolerate that more, right? And even then you had to temper that. Like you don't want to do that every single day because then, that's, and like, McGregor said that he thought he had actually had the fracture during camp from stuff like that. That's exactly what will happen is, microfractures take a while to heal. So, and again, Wolff's Law doesn't apply to breaking the bone from the side. It applies to axial loading because that's how osteoblasts, which are the cells that build bone, they line up in a very specific fashion to remodel that bone. Right. Because, millions of years of evolution say, this is we're going to support 250 pounds like this. Right. Not like this. Yeah. So you can't change the matrix of bone to all of a sudden be stronger and to an extent, can you? Yes, but not to the extent that a lot of people have been led to believe.
So what is this? Well, and I know it's probably not fiction, right? But I've heard this from so many different people. I've never had them. So you remember this from like basic training and, the guys that would get hairline fractures or whatever in their feet. So is a hairline fracture, is that real? Yeah. And do people get them from running? Yes. Or is it just because they haven't run before and their bones haven't had the time to, develop the type of density they need to...
Typically, it's from repeated microtrauma. So it happens again and again and again and again and again, and you just keep doing it, keep running, right? Right. And then that fracture gets bigger and bigger and bigger and doesn't heal properly. So great example. my left foot, I got a fracture from repeated road marching.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about this in the book too, that never healed.
Never.
Just never healed. So I kept, ever since about 1986, I kept chronically, I would notice during periods where I was doing like a lot of walking or whatever like in selection, it's like, I get this one pain in this one spot on my foot.
Right.
But I modify, I supinate or pronate a little bit. Yeah. And it goes away and I deal with it. And it got to be more and more and more of a problem. And then we were talking about Sharana. So I was in Sharana on deployment. And you remember that golf ball gravel that you had that was in that whole compound? Every day when we would leave the case span to go somewhere, my fucking feet were killing me. And I was wearing really light boots on that deployment. I had I had a pair of heavier boots that I would wear on cold nights out. But typically day to day, I was wearing pretty light boots, right? And I'm like, man, this is really bothering me. And there was an orthopedist there, and I asked him about it. He said, it sounds like you got a neuroma on your foot. You should probably get it looked at. So a neuroma is it's like a thickening in a nerve sheath.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So and it basically ends up being almost like you have a rock under the skin, right? Because it's a reactionary, it's like a callus.
Right.
And then over time, it stops helping and starts being an impediment. And that's basically what he was describing. So I kicked the can down the road for a few more years because I didn't want to stop jumping. I didn't want to stop deploying. And then finally I went to a podiatrist and x-rays didn't show anything. They did an MRI and they said, you have an unhealed fracture that's completely worn smooth. Like just, it must be really old. When do you think this happened? And I said, I know exactly when it happened. I was on the back part of Hunter Army Airfield on a forced march in 1986. And that's when I first started feeling this. And they're like, well, that's when you did it. So that's how long this has been going on. And yes, you do have a neuroma. We can take it out, but you're just going to get another one. And what they advised is they gave me some inserts for my boots.
Right.
I tried those for a while. They were a little bit too stiff. So I'm just careful in how I select my shoes.
So it'll
now.
never heal.
Nope.
Huh.
It's a thing.
It's done.
They said the only thing they could do was do a fixation that would go in through my toe and then my toe wouldn't bend. I would have one toe that wouldn't bend.
That wouldn't be good.
And I said, I do a lot, when I'm doing jiu-jitsu on the mat barefoot, like what's in there, like, oh yeah, that would be bad.
Right.
And I said, okay, then I don't want that. So
I'll notice, and these are just medical questions for me, so hopefully everybody really just zones the fuck out. But so when I'll notice this thing in my right foot where I'll wear sandals. A good portion of the summer I'll wear like flip-flops or some variant. And then I'll wear ultras, which are really wide footbed running shoe. But then I'll go to when I go back to my hunting boot and things start to tighten up. It feels like when my bones get closer together in my foot, it'll create almost like a pain in between the bones. That it's so fucking excruciating. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's from. But I used to get it every now and again. You remember when you get a fresh pair of fucking boots back in the day, and you had you had to break them in.
Wear them in the
just,
shower.
oh God. But yeah, I remember that. Whereas before they started tearing everything out of my jungle boots and basically making running shoes out of them.
Yeah.
I would have the same problem back in the day. Is that a nerve problem?
You might have a neuroma between the bones there.
Interesting.
It could also be if I do an X-ray of anybody's feet in this room, you're going to have these little, we call them sesamoid bones. So there's these little just bones kind of floating around there, and they're in various places. Sometimes one of those in a key location will cause you to have issues as well. But everybody has them. Okay. So it's not, you can't 100% say that that's what it is. There's a lot of things that I guarantee everybody in this room has herniated discs too. So when people go, well, I have this and this because I have a herniated disc. Literally, it's an astronomical number. It's 80% of adults have at least one herniated disc. But only about 25% are symptomatic. So there's a lot of things that we all have. Right. So just because I see it on an X-ray doesn't mean, oh, that's the culprit. Right. Because I can line up 100 of your peers and 80 of them are going to have the same thing on their X-ray. So it's a little bit difficult to say.
The same kind? I was talking to somebody about this the other day. There's these two injuries, but they all start with blown out.
Yeah.
I blew out my knee. That's why I never did that. Or blew out my back.
Yeah.
And always what did the doctor say to you
Yeah.
when you had this injury? Like,
Yeah.
did he say that you blew out your knee? Because I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah, because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes it sound like there's some capsule that just exploded.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I blew that out.
So yeah, I think some people, I think basically a torn ACL,
Right.
PCL, LCL, MCL. Basically, that's come to be equated with that term, fucking blown out knee. The one that drives me nuts is slipped disc.
Yeah. What is that?
So there isn't such thing as a slipped
Right.
disc. So what there is a herniated disc.
Right.
So the disc cannot slip. It's really, really well adhered to the vertebrae
it
above
doesn't
and
pop
below.
out.
Yeah, the disc doesn't slip.
Got it.
What happens is the center of that.
Right.
So what they call the nucleus propulsus, right? That's what HMP stands for, herniated nucleus propulsus, right? So you have this nucleus in the middle of that disc, and you're squeezing it, and the side of the disc will start to weaken, and you'll get like a little bulge there where it starts to come through. And usually that's pushing on a nerve. So that's a thing.
Mhm.
So a herniated disc, I have 4 of them. That's a thing. A slipped disc, because a slipped disc leads you to believe that, the disc slipped. So with a little bit of back cracking, I can slide it back in.
Which is important because do you believe in chiropractors?
I do believe in chiropractors.
Do you?
So I am not an anti. There are MDs and DOs that are anti-chiropractor. I am not.
I know. That's why I'm asking you the
Yeah,
question.
no. There's some.
Yeah.
I went to a chiropractor for a while. The last chiropractor I went to was the best because he even told me, he goes, all right, here's the deal. He goes, I'm not one of these chiropractors that you're going to see me once a week for the rest of your life. I'm the chiropractor that I'm going to adjust you, but you're also going to do all the exercises I make you do.
Right.
And you're going to get better and you're never going to have to see me again. He was a retired SEAL chief. He went to chiropractic school in the GI Bill.
Nice.
And he was working in Lima, Peru. And this is where I saw him. And he gave me a series of like 12 exercises to do. And he's like, I want you to do these every morning. And I said, is it better if I do them morning and night? He said, yep. And I said, then that's what I'm going to do. And I did those exercises religiously over about a 60-day period. And I haven't had any issues since. Now, when I start to get a minor issue, I just go back and I do a few of those exercises. I do some yoga. I do some foam rolling and stuff like that. And I'm better. But there's a pretty well-known chiropractor. I'll give a shout out to him in Albuquerque, New Mexico, named Bo Hightower. And he's got a background.
That's his real name.
That's his real name, Bo
wow.
Hightower.
I like that. Yep.
Cool guy. You'd like him. He works with a lot of UFC fighters. Has a pretty big internet following. And Bo has a background in physical therapy.
Mm.
And Bo and I see eye to eye we converse on social media all the time. We see eye and eye on a lot of things. Where you got to watch it when chiropractors start to say things like, and he is not one of them, right? But there are some who will say things like, well, I can cure allergies, or I'm going to give you vaccination advice.
Mm.
Those are chiropractors you want to kind of stay away from. The chiropractors that say, well, we know all these things that MDs don't know, right? Because they don't get education in this. I had a chiropractor try to tell me we were talking about something very specific, and it's a complication of chiropractic manipulation. And this guy swore to me up and down that it was like non-existent. Like, no, that never happens. And I sent him 3 scholarly articles saying it 100% does happen. And he said, that's not because of chiropractors, that's because of MDs trying to do what we do. And I'm like, come on, dude. You're grasping at straws now.
Right.
And I won't get into the rabbit hole of exactly what we were talking about, but it had to do with neck manipulation. But I do believe in chiropractors. Again, there's good MDs, there's bad MDs. There's good DOs, there's bad DOs. There's good DCs and there's bad DCs. There's good and bad dentists, orthodontists, everything else, right? So if it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. So if somebody is making some outrageous claims to you that they're the only provider you need to see, and the key to unlocking your fucking chakra and everything else they have, that's not somebody you want to go to. But somebody, a good chiropractic adjustment goes a long way, and it's
not just placebo.
No, it's not placebo, and that's I tend to believe there was a Joe Rogan did an episode. You've been on his podcast, of course. He did an episode where it was a very anti-chiropractic, I guess you would say, episode where he had a woman that he was interviewing, and she'd done a lot of research on chiropractic, and Rogan has too. And I understand everything that they talked about in that, right? But what's important, and this got brought up in that podcast, was, that you'll find that like Bo, who I was talking about, chiropractors who come from a physical therapy background are really useful. And they know a lot.
Right.
Because, it's much like, if somebody had a master's in kinesiology before going to med school and then became a sports medicine doctor.
Right.
They already have so much background in that they know a lot of these things that are going to help you. And chiropractic manipulation, we sit in poorly designed ergonomic chairs right now when we're driving. Everything else, we move around in ways that we were never designed to. And sometimes you need a little bit of help to kind of realign everything. Right. And undoubtedly, I mean, does a deep tissue massage feel awesome? Yes. Does a good chiropractic manipulation feel awesome? Fucking A, yeah, it does. I was having really bad lower back problems when I first got to 7th group. And I would go and they'd put the ultrasound on my back just to get the muscles relaxed enough that they could manipulate me. And ultimately what I figured out again is that I had to do some exercises to strengthen my paraspinous muscles and my accessory muscles to the point that I didn't need that anymore. But so circling back, long story short, I'm not anti-chiropractor. I'm anti any medical provider that makes unsubstantiated claims about outrageous things that they can do and cure. That's not a person that I think you should see.
But what about acupuncture? What do you think of that?
Yeah, acupuncture. That's been tested against in trials.
Right.
In I don't know. I want to say blinded trials, but in controlled trials, and it's been shown to be beneficial.
I had an interaction recently with someone who does. It's such a silly argument that I can't even remember which person was which. But what's the difference between dry needling and acupuncture? Because those two communities hate each other.
How it bills.
Seriously? A lot of them.
Dry needling has an ICD code that you can bill at a regular hospital. Acupuncture doesn't.
What's the difference?
There is no difference.
Really?
That I'm aware of, there is no difference. So I've never done dry needling, but I have done what's called trigger point injections, which is, people will come in with back problems.
Yeah.
A lot of, muscle spasm secondary to that. And I'll find trigger points and inject. And I've done it with small amounts of lidocaine. I've also done it with nothing more than normal saline. And sometimes just having some fluid in that space to kind of redirect that pressure gives you that release. I mean, it either, I equate it to this. Have you ever had like a pain, like maybe you got a pain in your arm, but you find a spot in your neck that if you put your finger there, I don't feel the pain in my arm anymore. So, I mean, it's the same thing that, we're disrupting the neurological signals of that pain is all ions, right? It's all, diffusing, through the synapses of the neurons, right? So if we can disrupt that at some point in the chain, either mechanically or chemically, it's going to have an impact, And chemically, the way we do that is typically with, pain relieving drug. We can do a local anesthetic or a narcotic, but you can also do it mechanically.
But there's literally no difference other than the name.
Not to my knowledge. Somebody, somebody can email us and correct me if I'm wrong. But to my knowledge, there's no difference between dry needling. I know when I worked at Darnell, because I was on the credentialing committee, so we would credential people to do dry needling, and people in PrevMed and in physical medicine and rehabilitation, or not PrevMed, but physical medicine and rehabilitation that worked in that clinic, whether they were MDs, DOs, PAs, NPs, they would get certified in doing dry needling. So,
because I've done both, and I've left feeling great both times.
Yeah,
and couldn't really tell you what the difference was.
Yeah. There's a lot of non-Western medicine out there that has benefits. So I used to be very much. I used to really laugh at cupping. I didn't see any advantage to that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've heard it's total bullshit. I did it 6 months ago. It was like back issues. It's like, I don't care. I'm here. Might as well try it.
Did you get a benefit from it?
I couldn't tell any difference. I got bruises that lasted like 6 months.
Yeah, so it gives you those hickeys, right?
Yeah.
So does cupping suck toxins out of your body into that cup? No fucking way.
Right.
Absolutely
it seems
not. Doesn't fucking
total
do
bullshit,
that, right? But does it provide heat? Okay, warmth.
Right.
And suction, thereby increasing blood flow,
Right.
thereby possibly bringing in more, cytokines, more, leukocytes to the area to aid in tissue repair, quite possibly. You put Bengay on something, it feels better, right? You put heat, you get in a hot bath, it feels better. So there's no reason that cupping, at least subjectively, is going to give you some relief. But it's, again, when we hear, it sucks the toxins out, and it's like, okay, now you're in fucking fantasy land. No, It doesn't do that.
Yeah, I've heard that. When I hear that, I'm like, how is that fucking possible? Like, how is it possible? So it obviously devalues it. I'll try whatever. I mean, most of the time it's just like, okay, who cares? If there's limited to zero negative side effects from doing something, like yoga is a good example.
Yeah.
It's like, I really enjoy doing hot yoga. I like it.
Yeah.
It makes my body feel great.
Yeah.
But I'm sweating profusely, which is, I never think that that's a bad thing for your body.
No, I don't either.
Just, cycling through liquid. So if you're drinking, a gallon of water the night before, and then you go in and you do an 1.5-hour session, and you're stretching and providing strength and mobility, there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's like, whatever, man, it's fine. So some of these things that you try, I think a lot of guys, they're reluctant to even try them because there's maybe some counter argument or counter information out there that's like, it's just kind of snake oil or whatever it might be. Like CBD is another good one. Everybody and their brother seems to have a fucking CBD company or a CBD like program or protocol. And
I'm going to. So
yeah. Well, I mean,
so I take CBD now, and I'm going to be adding it as one of my. I have 2 supplements in my line now with a plan for 7.
The question is what's the difference? Like, because I've heard cold processed, I've heard different forms of processing, and then I've also heard like you got to take X amount, and you can't do it with this, and you can't do it with that. I'm like. Yeah. It's so fucking confusing, man. I don't even know where to begin. Like how much to take, why to take it, where to buy it from. Like I don't know shit. And it's not this isn't an assist, by the way. It's a legitimate question because I don't fucking know anymore. There's so much CBD out there. I'm like, how much do you take?
I haven't gotten far enough. So I've read the studies that show, benefit for certain things like anxiety, inflammation, sleep. Right? That, overall feelings of wellness. A lot of studies out there that have been controlled studies, clinical trials that have shown benefit. As far as the in the weeds questions like you're talking about, I don't have answers to those yet. And that's why a good friend of mine that I was a physician at Womack with, Kamal Kelsey, he was the first Sikh physician in DOD. And he has a CBD company now, and I'm going to be partnering with him because I trust Kamal and I know that he's done a lot of the research, and I'm going to be trusting him to educate me on a lot of that stuff to bring me up to speed before I bring that to market as a private label as part of my supplement line. But there is a benefit to it. And again, this is another one of those things that gets muddled, right? Because the diehard CBD, THC people will hold up a lot of stories that are just factually inaccurate, right? You'll see like, oh, this kid had, this is one that comes to mind. This kid had it was like leukemia or lymphoma, I don't remember which. And his chest was full of tumors, and his mom gave him THC, and within 24 hours, all the tumors are gone. Completely impossible. Right. First of all, I don't remember which cancer this guy had, but it was a non-tumor cancer, right? To begin with. So there's no way that he had tumor. Now, might he have had some reactive lymph nodes?
Sure.
And the anti-inflammatory? Maybe that's what it is. But this story has been passed down again and again and again that, in 24 hours, it's like, okay, think of the laws of, something has this much mass. You can't just dissolve something in your body. Other than taking a shit and getting rid of it, right? Something that's physically in your body, like a tumor that's say this big, you can't magically dissolve that in 24 hours and it just goes somewhere. I mean, that's just not going to happen. It's physiologically impossible. So a lot of these urban legends / internet legends / wives' tales get perpetuated on the internet about these outlandish claims. And then somebody who comes along like you, who is reasonable and wants the factual stuff in it, well, okay, all that sounds way too good to be true. So you have to kind of much like we've seen with the last couple of years with COVID, is you got to live in the middle here on Sanity Island and go, what you're saying on that side sounds fucking crazy and doesn't make sense. And what you're saying over here sounds crazy and doesn't make sense, right? So with the CBD, THC, it's the same. The people that boohoo it completely, okay, yeah, there is data. And then the people that like, oh, it's literally, it will cure. And so to go back to the SF, there's almost weekly, somebody will go, hey, I've got such and such. Any advice? And there's 2 or 3 of you guys who are like, start smoking weed. Like that's like, no matter what's wrong with you.
Start smoking weed. It's fine.
Start smoking weed. That'll fix it.
That's going to fix it. Yeah. Well, it's medical.
Big Pharma doesn't want you to know.
Yeah, Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about weed.
Constitution's written on hemp.
It's like, yeah.
Which is again, so that's partly true.
Partly.
The original Constitution is not, or was the Constitution the Declaration of Independence? I don't remember. But one of them, a copy is written on hemp paper. But the original, the one that you go and is in the glass case, the one that Nicolas Cage wants, that one's not on hemp.
Yeah, or George Washington was a pot farmer. It's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of people in the agriculture community would grow hemp for a wide variety of reasons. But hemp was it's a sterile form of the product. They were like growing weed out there in their tie-dyes, like, going out to Humboldt County. It was like, man, they were growing it for fiber, like totally different circumstance.
They're getting their history lessons from Matthew McConaughey movies.
Martha Washington was a hip lady, man.
Look at Washington State. It was the state, man.
Because there's a line in that movie where he says, yeah, man, they all thought it'd be a good cash crop for the southern states.
Yeah.
They were all into weed back then.
Yeah, they're into hemp, but they're totally different. It's like saying that you're into mules,
Yeah.
I mean, or like mules and horses are the same. They're definitely not. There's a lot of medical folklore, which I think is really interesting, because just like humans in general, like my dad will come in, and I hear this all the time, like conspiracy theory stuff. It's like, well, I'll tell you what, it's that Illuminati, and you're like, I don't think the Illuminati is trying to push electric cars on you guys. I'm throwing that out there. I don't think they have anything against, Volvo as a company or a manufacturer. Well, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Volkswagen, that was funded by Hitler's gold. Everybody knows that. You don't know that, dummy?
Yeah.
I don't.
People that believe in the Illuminati have way too much confidence in the competency of other human beings.
Or just way too much confidence in people's ability to keep a fucking secret.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So this was a conversation that I had with somebody. We were talking about the whole COVID thing, and a comment was made like, this is a dry run. COVID's just a dry run. The next one, like this is to see what they can get away with, and this is the next one. And I'd be like, look, man, if you've ever been involved in anything with the government, we can't remember what packing list we took to fucking JRTC 3 fucking years ago.
Right.
You think honestly we can plan that far in advance?
It's the level of mistrust and trust that they have in the government at the same time it's confusingly hypocritical, because when you look at it and you're like, at one point you're saying the government is so incompetent, but it also has the ability to keep these secrets for, decades on end. I would have these people, and it's so funny, they'd come up to me because if they, like once I was out of the CIA for a number of years, people come up to me like, hey bro, so tell me, are there aliens? I'm like, okay, first and foremost, I don't know what you think. They just like, there's 28,000 people that work there.
Right.
Like, are they just like, oh, these 28,000 people, listen up. Welcome to the CIA. Aliens are over there. The guy who killed JFK, he's down the hall. This is the whole CIA museum. This is where all the secrets are. We're just open up all the files. There you go. Hey, I know you're here to sweep the floor, but everybody's got to know about the aliens here first. Before we do anything, we're going to set this tone. And I'm like, no, I don't know.
Well, it's like I saw you. I think it was on this podcast that you were talking about. We're always wondering where that other CIA was.
I wish
that was all high speed and fucking had all those cool secrets, right?
Because I mean, the Soviets are the Russians, because Soviets, well, they are basically the same.
It's all because it's all these Hollywood tropes, right?
Yeah.
So the Hollywood trope too. You always have the Hollywood trope, and it's probably most where you see it the most is in zombie movies.
Yeah.
That the moment the military gets a chance, they're just going to fucking take over fucking everything.
Take over.
And they're going to put you in fucking camps and abuse this fucking E4 National Guard is going to dub himself mayor of this town and be abusing his authority. When, it's...
They can barely organize themselves to go fill sandbags for a flood, motherfuckers.
That was
come on.
I actually, during the beginning of COVID, units from, I think, Fort Lewis were going to NTC down by Barstow.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, they put their gear, their heavy, on a railhead line, and it goes from north to south to Barstow on trains.
And that's all over fucking social media.
Government's invading LA.
Yeah.
There's tanks. You see it.
Tanks coming.
People take a video like, so instead of gassing them up and, putting rounds and crews on them, they decided to do the invasion on a fucking train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there's that annual exercise that we've done forever.
Jade Helm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, man, the tinfoil hats and what they fucking what they come up with.
Yeah.
I was talking to one of my buddies. He's the direct liaison between I think it's FEMA or one of those government organizations, but their entire command organization is about major national disasters and how the military specifically plugs in and helps. How do we mobilize this extremely effective, logistics force, both manpower and capabilities, in order to directly plug into a community and then, provide help. In a circumstance like Salt Lake, that's where he was, and we were talking about it. You have, even outside of LA, I think it has the most earthquakes, per year than any other place in America with population density. And then it sits on top of the the Yellowstone super volcano or whatever, right? So you got all these different things that people are planning for. And granted, we should be really encouraging them to be planning for these national disasters because we also don't want to be caught flat-footed. So when you look at the military coming in and interfacing with a community like Salt Lake, because if we have a major earthquake, we're talking about overpasses collapsing. And not only that, he was telling me that there is a scenario in which the fault line shifts and the lake creates a tidal wave that then sweeps into Salt Lake, or at least past the airport, and then could go up to something like 8 feet in Salt Lake. We were talking about that. He was talking about the conspiracy theorists and the way that they're talking about it. It's like the military has a plan to go into martial law if there's an earthquake in Salt Lake. And he's like, we're literally just talking about how do we figure out how to come in and provide logistics and support to evacuate families and coordinate quite literally medical support. But it's like martial law. That's as soon as anybody sees the military, it's like martial law. We're going into work, and it's like. And people, you want those people there, man.
And people also that have those conspiracy theories in their head, they forget that I have a mom and dad and a brother that are Americans that if there was martial law somewhere, I wouldn't come in and start, fucking down my family. And,
right.
Everybody comes from somewhere. Yeah. And we didn't all get grown on in a camp from being babies to be this long arm of the conspiracy law,
Well, and if you look at, Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, exactly.
Local authorities, they were all of a sudden got really worried about armed people coming in. So they were doing this, the contractors that were coming in and they're like, hey, it's the Wild West, so we're taking guns. And they legitimately, there was some illegal gun confiscation that went on. Was the military and National Guard doing that? No, it was local authorities that were doing it. So, to say that the military is you're going to tell me that you're going to get some E4 in the National Guard and you're going to tell him, hey, go confiscate weapons. That's just not, like you say. Now, number one, he's probably, these are, his cousins, people that he went to high school with.
Or can you imagine but people think that Delta Force is going to get the orders or something and go out and be like, listen, you know what we heard? Jed Smith has a 12-gauge shotgun in his, we need to mobilize Delta Force to go out there and grab that shotgun.
Well, and this gets perpetuated. I'm not going to mention any names, but there were people saying when Ferguson went down, there was, here's some dudes standing around, some dudes who look military standing around a car with North Carolina plates.
Right.
Delta forces in Ferguson.
Yeah.
And like you can take one look.
Their POVs.
They drove their POVs.
Yeah, you take one look at the guys in that picture and you're like, none of those guys are Delta.
Right.
No fucking way.
No fucking way. No fucking way. Yeah.
In fact, PSYOPs even seems doubtful.
In fact, North Carolina National Guard seems doubtful. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I've got one more question.
Okay.
Okay. So what's the name of your podcast? Where can people find you and where can they buy your book?
So
this is a series of questions.
Yeah. The podcast is called Mind of the Warrior.
Okay.
I try to come out weekly. I promise I'm going to do better about that in 2022. So 2021 was a bad year for me and the number of episodes that I put out. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Mike Simpson, DrMikeSimpson. Also, Graybeard Performance is my company.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
Graybeard Performance is a life and lifestyle company for dudes over 40, still want to fucking kick ass and be savages. So it's the lifestyle brand revolves around my Graybeard Performance supplement line, of which I have 2 supplements now, adding a third early 2022. And hopefully by the end of 2022, I'll have all 7 of my supplements out. And my book, as you mentioned, is Honed, Finding Your Edge as a Man Over 40. It's available barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com, Amazon, Goodreads, any place that you can buy books online. It's downloadable and you can get soft copy or softback. It's done real well. I was number 1 on like 8 different of the Amazon lists for a while. I'm still up there.
Nice.
Over 10,000 copies sold, almost 200 reviews, most of them 5-star. So
cool.
It's I think it's made a difference to people. And it's I go through everything from sleep, nutrition, exercise plans, finding a tribe of like-minded individuals, keeping yourself accountable, all that stuff.
Well, I will read it and I'll report back. But you should absolutely follow Mike, follow everything he does. Take a look at his books, take a look at Graybeard, take a look at everything he's got going on. It's very interesting. Plus, he did Medevac. Was that a couple months ago?
2 months ago.
Yeah, so that episode of Medevac went up. That was actually why I was like, I listened to it and I was like, why isn't this dude been on my podcast? And that's when I hit him up. I was like, bro, why aren't you on my podcast? So follow him, check him out. Hopefully we'll have him again because it's been a great conversation. Thanks, man.
That concludes today's training. Any questions?